Where's this right now? Huh? I can't see anything, man. It's so foggy. This might just be the backside of TV. Remix.
No sound, feel no pain, capture, helpless, unmade, triple fate, life breath, no breath, falling down.
Hello and welcome to the Weekly Stuff Podcast with Jonathan Lack.
And Sean Chapman.
We are here to talk about stuff this week on the show. What don't we have to talk about? We've been off for a week, so we have all sorts of news. We got our first look at the new Star Wars movie. Joker from Persona 5 came to Smash Brothers and brought some friends with him. Disney unveiled their streaming service. Xbox One unveiled a new console. PlayStation sort of unveiled a new console. We got a look at a new Star Wars game. Oh my god, so much happened in these last 2 weeks, Sean, and we also have just stories to tell. And I bought the fucking Labo VR from Nintendo because they're adding the VR support next week for Mario and Zelda. And yeah, this is just going to be a stacked episode. Our main topic is going to be because Sony did this weird quasi-unveiling of their plans for the PlayStation 5, we're going to finally tackle in broad terms the question of the next generation. We've been threatening to do it for a while, so I think that's going to be our main topic today. But yeah, it's this outline has me exhausted, and we haven't even started yet, Sean.
Yeah, no, it's stacked. Like, we already would have had stuff if we could have done last week's podcast, and then, because that was all the Star Wars stuff was last week, and then all the PlayStation stuff happened this week, so it's like, well, fuck it. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about then.
We do. You might have noticed our theme song was a fun little piece of Persona music. I just want to say where that's from, because even diligent Persona fans probably have not heard it. My brother Thomas, who is in Japan, went to this big anime store in Nagano, where he is, and found a special 3-disc version of the Persona 4 Dancing All Night soundtrack, which is only 2 discs. And the 3rd disc is all these, like, club remix versions. I'm not entirely sure what it's about. He hasn't sent me the whole thing yet. But one of them had this version of Backside of the TV with the extra Lotus Juice intro. So, you know, we thought our listeners would enjoy that. That's a little treat for you guys this week.
No, any Lotus Juice is good Lotus Juice in my book.
Yes, there is some Lotus Juice in Smash Brothers now. Smash Brothers is a better game for it.
Yeah, every game should just have a Lotus Juice theme. Like, it's just how it should be handled.
Absolutely. All right, Sean, you want to do some stuff?
Yeah, let's cover some stuff, because it's been a little bit.
Should I just start with my Labo VR adventures?
Yeah, because I'm just very anxious. I so want to hear what the fuck sticking cardboard to your face is about. What are we doing in the year 2019, Jonathan?
Okay, so, Sean, a couple weeks ago on the show, we went over the news that they're going to be adding VR support via the Nintendo Labo VR set for Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey. And you said in no uncertain terms, I had to buy a Labo VR so I could experience this and talk about it on the podcast, and I agreed. So, a few days ago, no, it was just yesterday, I walked into a Best Buy and gave the cashier $30 to buy a Labo VR kit, which is gigantic because it's these giant strips of cardboard. I don't have the box of itself with me, but it was just like, it was so humiliating to check out, because you know how some game systems, like even if they're aimed at kids, they have like kids on the box, but also maybe teenagers or like, you know, a vaguely ethnic couple they'll do their thing with in modern corporate America. There's none of that. It's all little tiny kids on the box, and I looked like a creep buying it. So I slapped down my $30. I slapped down my dignity. I bought the starter set, which is just the VR headset, the blaster thing, and this little pinwheel device. I have not built the blaster yet. That apparently takes like 3 or 4 hours. I have not had time for that. I did build the VR headset, and I built, you can see it here, Sean, the little pinwheel thing. You put this on the front of the headset, and then you go and blow it. It's not working right now. There we go. It's blowing a little bit. And it, like, detects, there's these little, like, white stickers, and then your right Joy-Con goes in the slot here, Sean, and the IR sensor comes out the bottom and detects the stickers going by, and you can play games with the weird little pinwheel thing. So that's one thing I got with it. But here is the headset itself, Sean. I'm going to try to show you this through the webcam. It is cardboard, as you can tell, The inside, there is plastic for where the goggles themselves are because they need special eyepieces. But yeah, I mean, I will say it was fun to build. It was very much like a Lego project, but with Nintendo's spin on it, because what you have is these big strips of cardboard, and you punch out the pieces you need. They comes with a game cartridge, and you put the game cartridge in your Switch, and then it shows you the instructions on screen. And this is actually pretty cool. It's a step up above like a Lego set. A Lego set is they give you a book of instructions, right? With this, it's basically an interactive video that plays on your Switch. Because it's your Switch, you can bring it into any room. Like, it would have been inconvenient to me to build this at like the table where I have stuff in front of my TV. So I like brought the Switch over to my kitchen table, laid it out. Every step of the way, it also gives you a fully modeled 3D version of what you're looking at, so you can just look at it from any angle if you want to. It's very hard to get confused because it's all there. So that side of it is really fun, and I mean, that's true for all of the Labo kits, and, you know, to be fair, I've only heard good things about Labo before now. I have not bought it yet. It does seem like the kind of thing that would be really fun for kids because you get the sense of building something and then playing with it, and the Labo VR feels like it's in that same vein. But yes, you put it together, and as you can see, Sean, this slit here, where it's even got some like little velvet things, stickers you put in there to protect your Switch, this is where I would put in my Nintendo Switch. So I have my system here. Let me see if I can get it started. Yeah. Okay, starting my Switch, and then it needs to adjust the gyroscope, so I lay my Switch down and wait. There it goes. I'm going to turn the sound off on the Switch because it's loud right now. Okay, then you can actually see, Sean, because I haven't gone into VR mode yet, the like list of games that are just the built-in ones. Okay, so now I'm going to go into VR mode. It's going to split, and it's going to tell me to put it into my Nintendo Switch. Sorry.
Interesting, yeah. So for the listeners, when you said you split it, it basically like turned the image into two separate, like kind of stereoscopic images. That were like looked like they were a little bit spherical.
Okay, so Sean, now you can see I've loaded my Switch into the headset. Now I'm going to click on the Joy-Con. One. So I put my right one on. I'm going to put my left one on. You can see it's a bit of a hassle to get this thing loaded in there. And now I put this stupid fucking thing up to my face. And it works! Like, it is... okay, I'm picking a game called Bomb Hockey. This is game number 3.
Oh my god.
And, yeah, I'm a little guy running around in a VR world. It has head tracking and everything, so, you know, where I look, it goes. And I am playing... It's called Bomb Hockey, but it's more like Bomb Soccer, because it's like we're each on the side of a court kicking the ball. I guess that's more like...
I've got a spoiler for you, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Soccer and hockey are basically the same sport.
Okay, fair enough. This doesn't look like either of them. But yes, I mean, the thing is, Sean, it totally works. It is VR. It's in 3D. It's fairly immersive. It is low res, no doubt about it, because the Switch is a 720p display. But like, it works better than I would have anticipated. I will say the first time I used this the other day, I got a bad headache. And I wasn't even really doing much with it because I didn't have any of the other stuff built. Like the weird pinwheel contraption is more of an immersive VR thing. You know, mostly the built-in stuff is just little mini games. You run around. You know, I've got my little 3D guy with me. Some of them are more first person if you're doing like, you know, run and gun kind of stuff. But you can see it like just shines on through the dumb little goggles. And yeah, like, it's a VR headset. You do have to hold it up. My arms do get tired if I do it for too long. I have not probably done this for more than like 10 minutes at a time so far. But yeah, it's VR. I have not built the blaster yet. That would be like the marquee attraction of the set I bought. So I'm excited to see what that's like. But I am really curious about Mario and Zelda, especially Zelda, which is the whole game. They did announce it has head tracking in Zelda, so you can just use it as to just look around Hyrule with it if you want. Mario is more of like a contained experience. I'm sure they'll both be interesting. The Mario one will probably be good because it's a contained VR-based experience. The Zelda one, I don't fucking know, but I'm excited to find out. But yes, I will have to go through that whole process of set up the Switch, put it in the thing, put the Joy-Con on, and then hold it up to my face like this. How stupid do I look, by the way, on a scale of
the stupidest. It's pretty fantastic. Yeah, there's something about seeing a grown man just with a fucking big slab of cardboard stuck to his face with like a neon red and blue thing hanging off the side of each. It's pretty good.
No, I tried to select shooting hoops, but I have to detach the Joy-Con for that one, so I'm not doing that. Anyway, yeah. Okay, it will not let me go home. I'm trying to shut off my Switch. I have to, look up here to select the close option. I mean, I will say, Sean, you know this about me. I have not really done VR before.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily, my thing. There is something cool about it, the interesting thing is this, when you put it in like that, it's this little screen, but it does give you that sense, and I've heard this about VR before, that it's like a big world. Like, it looks like you're looking at almost like a big theater screen or something, and that can be kind of cool. It is funny to do it with, VR is so expensive. This was, with my Best Buy discount, $33 with tax. It's cardboard and plastic, but mostly cardboard. I love that I have to just take my fucking expensive $300 Switch tablet and stick it into a piece of cardboard to use it.
The best part is that you are just holding it up to your face.
Yes.
That's the part that's it seems like they should have been able to come up with some sort of strap system or something. Maybe as an optional add-on. There's if you bought the expensive version, here's 3 Velcro loops or something you can put together so you can kind of hang on your face. So you're not just sitting there holding it up to your face like a dumbass.
I mean, it is. I will say the games themselves are clearly designed to be short minigame style things. It's not long immersive experiences, except Zelda. They're going to have that mode with next week, which again I think is more for the fun of just looking around Hyrule than really someone's going to do it. Someone's going to play all 100 hours of that game in VR and they're going to die. But yeah, it is weird, but also it's a cool thing for Nintendo to do. I mean, let's be fair. A lot more people are going to be able to try out VR with this stupid thing than with PSVR or whatever. The price of entry is quite a bit lower on this, and it is fun to build the headset and put everything together. That's my favorite part because I like constructing Legos and things like that. And it's very user friendly on that level. But yeah, it is. I love that it is this cardboard thing, and when it's the headset is out, it's just this giant yellow sign that says Nintendo Labo. Yep. So everyone knows what you're doing. Should I play this on the bus sometime, Sean? Just be a total idiot.
I mean, you should just, in the middle of, class or whatever, maybe, students are taking a test or something, just slap that bad boy out, just put that on your face, see how long it takes for someone to just verbally ask you, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah. It wouldn't take long.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah. I have a friend I share an office with at school who is working on some VR stuff for his dissertation, and he traded with another person in the department. He gave them his Switch, and they gave him their PSVR. And I'm just thinking now, bad trade. You could have just gotten this. Get the best of both worlds right there.
There you go.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I'm really looking forward to hearing what... I want you to play a significant, sustained session of Zelda. I want you to push your physical limits, find out how long it takes for you to play Zelda in, one sustained sitting before you become physically uncomfortable enough that you just really can't play anymore.
It might not be that long.
Yeah, that's why I'm framing it that way. I'm guessing it's 30 to 45 minutes is I gotta actually really take this thing off, or I'm going to throw up, or be physically upset for the rest of the day.
30 to 45 sounds long. But yes, what have you been up to, Sean? Have you been building cardboard and strapping it to your face?
No, I have not. I did. So last week, the reason why we did not end up having a podcast is because I chaperoned the high school prom for the high school that I'm at, and that was a very dull experience. And somehow, so I have never gone to a school dance before. This was literally the first one I have ever gone to, of any kind. Whether it's prom, didn't go to prom ever. Whether it's homecoming, never. Any of those, anything, I avoided it. Even if it was a mandatory, we want students to be there when like elementary or middle school would do sort of pseudo dance things, I would get out of it somehow by pretending to be sick or something, because I just have no interest in it at all. And so then going to it now as an adult 100% reinforced my position of seems fucking really boring. So I just kind of sat there and watched teenagers do nothing for about 4 hours on Saturday, and that was great. So that's why we didn't have a podcast last weekend. Prom, it's not... I still don't get it. I just don't get it.
See, Sean, though, you are in a good position because you didn't go to school dances. You do not have any traumatic memories from school dances that would fuck
True.
you up if you went. I would not. I have not gone through the necessary therapy where I would be able to do that as an adult, Sean. So, good for you. You're well adjusted.
Yeah, it's definitely just like a very like, and maybe the thing most surprising to me about prom was that I knew basically every single song that the DJ played, because apparently just like music, like prom, like school style music has not changed enough in the past like 10 plus years. Because it's just like, like even though I didn't go to my prom, I can almost guarantee you that like this song and that song and that song must have been played at my prom. Like, not that I could really identify the songs, but they were all songs I had heard before. And there was like almost nothing that was actually new. And I was kind of interested by that. I don't know what that says about society. I don't know what that says about music. I don't know what that says about this prom in particular. But I was very shocked that I was expecting like every single song to be something I'd never heard before in my life. I knew almost every single song that they played.
I
That was weird.
don't know what songs played at our prom, Sean, because I was there, but it was at Invesco Field at Mile High, the football stadium. It's not called Invesco Field anymore. And they had double booked schools for prom. This was our junior prom.
Great.
And the school that had more money and people, so probably Lakewood or someone, they got the normal like room that Invesco has for students to do prom at, and we were in a hallway. And I'm not joking, we were in a fucking hallway, and like it was so cramped and hot, and there were no acoustics because it's a fucking hallway, and the music was so loud. It was just that sense where something gets loud enough that you can't physically hear it, you can feel it, but you can't hear it anymore. That's what it was. And also it was so hot that within like 40 minutes, all the windows were completely steamed over. It was the grossest fucking evening. And then there was other stuff that happened. So anyway, yeah, prom was bad.
Yeah, no, proms continue to be bad. So I really just spent a lot of time on Saturday questioning like my life choices of, I spent so much of my youth avoiding doing all of this shit, and then somehow now I have picked the like only occupation in the fucking world that then like asks you to continue to go to those. Like everybody else is done. Whether you went to them or not after high school, it's fucking over. You don't ever do those again. Somehow I am now stuck in the eternal hell of high school proms. So, there's a lot of soul searching that happened.
Maybe not yet, but eventually you'll theoretically get paid for it. So there's that.
Yes, that would be nice if I got a little extra bunts for it. But not this time. Because, student teaching is a big racket where it's like really was making me think about all like the Marxist criticism I studied in my undergrad stuff. Being like, man, this is just such unethical fucking labor practices that I'm engaged in now. But there's literally no other option available to anybody. So,
welcome to the world of graduate teaching too.
Yeah,
we're all
bad.
in the same boat. All right.
So other than questioning all those life decisions, the other thing that I did do, just sort of on a whim, was I just kind of broke out the Modern Warfare Remastered thing from like 2 years ago or whatever. And it was just like because I think it was on PS Plus a couple of months ago, so it had been kind of in the back of my head that I'd never actually played all the way through that campaign again. And I was like, oh, fuck it. Like, I'll just do that now. So that's kind of what I did last week, is I played through Modern Warfare Remastered and played through that campaign. That game is still very, very good. I think it held up really well. And I had not played it since probably like 2009 or 10, around when Modern Warfare 2 came out. But I was shocked by how well I still remembered that game. And like every single level I got to, I was like, oh yeah, this level, and this happens, and this happens, and this happens. And that to me is the mark of a really well put together campaign. If even like almost 10 years later, I can still remember like most of the specific beats of that game in terms of gameplay moments and level design and stuff like that. That means that is like a really fantastically put together campaign. And I think Call of Duty 4 gets a lot of props for its multiplayer stuff for good reason, but like that campaign is fucking killer, and the remastered version is really nice looking. Like they did some work to get that thing up to snuff on this set of consoles. So people looking to play that game, I still recommend it. If you did not play it in 2007 when it came out, I think it'd be a cool thing to play it for the first time now. And if you haven't played it in like 10 years, fucking go back to that campaign, because you can play it in like 8 hours or so, and it is very, very good.
Yeah, I haven't played the remastered campaign yet. I did some of the multiplayer when Infinite Warfare came out. Not Infinity War. Two different things. But yeah, I did some of but I had not played the campaign again. But you talk about it, and immediately like the scene where you are going through not the bushes, but like you're crawling on the ground with
in the ghillie suits.
In the ghillie suits, yeah, that's what it is. And also the one where you're at the like abandoned Ferris wheel, the mission on the ship. Not at the beginning, but there's another one later on. Just like it's all etched in my memory. That game's very good. It's one of the 3 good Call of Duty campaigns: Call of Duty 2, that one, and Infinite Warfare.
Yes.
So yes.
The last thing I wanted to mention about Modern Warfare, because most of that game I think has like aged very well. There's one thing I had totally forgotten that is the most 2007 thing a video game could ever have, is during the end credits of Call of Duty 4, they play a rap that was made for Call of Duty 4, which is also Gears of War did the same thing. I think there are a couple of other games around that period of like the kind of early to mid 360 generation. There are lots of end credits rap songs that are not like, this is not like they took some fucking, Kanye song or something and licensed it. They wrote a song that is then performed by whoever the like token black character in the cast is. So I'm now going to read to you, Jonathan, some of the lyrics for Deep and Hard, the Call of Duty 4 rap.
Oh my God, someone was playing a prank with that. Jesus.
Yeah. So the first thing that plays is a clip from what I assume must be like some E3 conference or something that Call of Duty 4 was debuted at. So you just get like this like raw audio clip of someone saying, hot off the heels of Call of Duty 2, the Infinity Ward team has been developing Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. We're making a more sophisticated, deeper Call of Duty experience. Variety is the next big thing for us. We're going in deep and we're going in hard. That's where the name of the song comes from. The weak man may be careful not to soil himself when he plays this game, which is a fucking line. And then a gunshot plays, and then you get the rapping from Staff Sergeant Griggs, or the voice actor that plays Griggs, who's, again, the token black character in the cast. He's like the U.S. Marine that is the only Marine that kind of survives all the nuclear shit that happens in the middle of the game. So then Griggs raps out, enter my mind, in time you will find my lines. Combine, intertwine, underlined, rhyme, divine. No hind can go against me. 249 lift you swiftly. Front lines in here with me. Think I'm lying? Come and get me, ha. Sergeant Griggs reporting for duty. Some say this belong in a movie. But this the third installment, Infinity Ward shit. Don't soil your drawers cause it's deep and it's hard, bitch. Ready for action, 50 cals start to clappin'. 4 horsemen kick in a rerun asking, what's happening? Too late for all that flapping. Out the gates with autos packed in. This one's for Macmillan. 15 years you had relaxin'. Now it's time to settle the score. We ready for war. SAS on board. My tribe award tour. And this the third installment, Infinity Ward shit. Don't soil your drawers cause it's deep and it's hard, bitch.
Wow.
Yeah. So that just plays over the ending credits of this game that in no way has the tone that indicates there should be some rap song at the end that breaks the fourth wall, because the whole tone of the game is so somber and serious, and it's just, like just imagine the menu music of Call of Duty 4. It's just like this like and like all that. It's just like this very somber like deep fucking war thing, and then
Deep and hard, man.
Hard, bitch. Yeah. Fucking hell. 2007 was a different time now, Jonathan. That was a long time ago.
Yes, it was. Oh, boy. All right, you want to move on?
Yep, let's move on from that.
Okay, I'm going to skip the next thing on my outline because we've just got a lot going on. I've played a little more Super Dragon Ball Heroes in the last week. I'm still having fun with it. I am probably more on the side of you, Sean, in that, yes, the main card game is fairly repetitive, but, if I play it for just like 10, 15 minutes at a time, I still very much have fun with it. But yeah, have you played any more of it?
Basically the same as you. Like, I haven't put in like a lot of time since the last podcast because I've been busy. I've been playing Call of Duty 4, and then also it is that just like I can't play it more than like 15 to 30 minutes at a stretch because it just becomes too repetitive, and it's like I feel like I just need to get deep enough into the game that I just have a shit ton of cards, so I can just make a bunch of decks that have no duplicated cards, because if I do 3 or 4 matches with the same set of heroes, I'm just incredibly bored because I'm doing the same thing over and over again. And so I just wish they just gave you like 500 cards. Just throw all the cards at me. I don't give a shit. Just let me hit a button that like ruins this game on that side, but just lets me put together a bunch of different combinations of teams, because some of the characters have some really cool abilities. But so because one I have is Goku Zeno, who has this whole like God Kamehameha move that activates on one of the rounds, and it's really cool. And it's a cool animation, and like you like take the card and like draw a G on the screen to activate it, and like all that shit is really cool the first time you do it. And then after the 5th time I've done it, I'm like, this takes like 2 fucking minutes to do this whole thing and draw the G and watch all the animations play. It's like, because I think you have to shake the card on the screen, then you have to draw the G, then you see him go Super Saiyan, then you see him fire Kamehameha. And it's like, that's all cool stuff, but oh my god, I can only see it like 2 or 3 times, and then I'm pretty bored with it. So I wish there was some stuff that like facilitated like speeding that game up a bit more.
Sure, I agree. There were 2 things I did in it this week that I loved. One was I learned about these cards, because I had gotten a couple of these cards in random draws in the gacha machine, where there's a set out of the Super Dragon Ball Heroes gacha set 5. So there's 8 sets of cards, and then there's 2 universe missions. But if you go to the main card list set 5, there are 6 rare cards that are all members from the Universe 7 team from the Tournament of Power in the Dragon Ball Super anime. And if you get all 6 of those, they give each other a power-up where for every one of those you have on your team, you get 1,000 power. So if you have all 6, everybody gets a 6,000 power boost. And so I grinded for a while just putting all my gachas into set 5, and I did get all 6, and they are very fun to have all together. And then I usually throw Beerus or one of my Master Roshis on there to like augment the team, because you have 7 cards overall, and that's fun. Then I also did manage to beat a really hard thing in arcade mode, where I was doing the Golden Frieza arcade run, Frieza's Resurrection, and the last fight is Golden Frieza, and all of those boss fights in arcade are insanely hard, and I probably had to do that battle like 10 different times, but I finally found a team combination which involved a special card of Hirudegarn, the villain from Dragon Ball Z Movie 13, and that was very fun, and it worked, and I did it in like 2 rounds too. Like once you know what you're doing and like you set all the effects in motion, it happens very fast. So that was fun. But yeah, it's, story mode is a bit of a grind. The game is what it is. I don't mind any of this. Like, if it's a game that's good for 15 to 30 minutes at a time, that's fine. The world eats those too. But, and it is good to have on Switch, because you just take it with you, and sometimes, like, if I have 5 minutes, it's a good one to do, or while I'm watching TV or something. But yeah, it's a game.
Yep.
Speaking of Dragon Ball, though, Sean, we got our Blu-rays in this week. Dragon Ball Super Broly. Let's dispense with the controversy first about this Blu-ray.
Yes.
Which is that I think the first person to notice this online, because they had an early copy, was Anime AJ on Twitter, who has also, by the way, done some very good instructive videos on the issues with Funimation's new Dragon Ball Z TV set that I would recommend on YouTube. But he noticed that compared to other versions, the Funimation Blu-ray of the Broly movie has this slight green tint on it. And this kind of blew up for a couple days, and then people got it. A lot of people didn't notice it. Some people did notice it, hated it. I just want to say, because I dug in a little deeper with this. I looked at the movie. I watched it. I ripped it on my computer. There is a green tint on the Funimation version.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's not Funimation's fault. This is not like the 30th anniversary set. Funimation is absolved of blame here. This is Toei. They gave them this version. But Toei has something in their pipeline where Toei loves adding green tints to Dragon Ball stuff. The most obvious example of this is if you've seen any of the Buu arc of Dragon Ball Kai, which is called Dragon Ball Kai: The Final Chapters in the West. That has, like, the green tint to end all green tints. You will never be able to mistake that. The Broly one is much more mild, but it is there. Basically what it results in is things look a little too dark. Skin tones in particular are off. Like, Goku should be a little pink, and he's not in this version. Other than that, the Blu-ray looks beautiful. The color depth is great. The detail is great. The audio tracks on this Blu-ray are out of this fucking world. But it is there. It's too bad. I don't think you will generally notice it if you are watching it on a decently well-calibrated TV, but it is there. If you don't like it, there is the manga UK version of the movie, which is the UK distributor of Dragon Ball. Their Blu-ray comes out next month at the end of May, and it has been confirmed it does not have any kind of green tint. The theory for this is that PAL Blu-rays, as opposed to NTSC Blu-rays, which is what we have in North America, run at 23.98 frames per second instead of 24, and so Toei had to give them a slightly different master, and somehow it escaped the green tint. Anime AJ on Twitter has that Blu-ray. They sent him a review copy to confirm this, and it looks gorgeous, and I have that on pre-order because I would like to compare them. Overall, I would not discourage anyone from picking up the Funimation version for this. It's not that big a problem, but it is too bad. Dragon Ball's having some rough home video times this month.
Yeah, and so I was able to notice the green tint stuff a little bit. I suspect a little bit more on my setup than you did on yours based on the tweets I saw that you made. But for people who have the Blu-ray, I think one thing that actually helps mitigate it a little bit is the fact that it's much harder to notice in the first 15 to 20 minutes of the movie when you're on Planet Vegeta and particularly Planet Wampa, because the color palettes are very stylized in those two sections of the movies. And compared to when you get to Earth, where it has a much more sort of natural color palette. So I think that kind of actually helps you not really notice the green tint until you get deep enough, you're absorbed enough into the movie that you wouldn't notice it anyways. Because it wasn't until I was 40 to 45 minutes in the movie that I realized oh yeah, no, that green tint is definitely 100% there. But I had so gotten it out of my mind because I hadn't really noticed it at the very beginning. I think
you also have a better
color
TV
palettes
than
are very
me.
different. Yes,
Yeah.
I do have a very nice looking TV.
Yeah, it's a little bigger. It's 4K. That will all affect it too. Yeah, it's weird. It didn't ruin the movie or anything, but
No.
it's such a gorgeous Dragon Ball movie. I wish it wasn't there.
Yes, but weird green tint thingy aside,
We finally got to see the real movie.
holy shit, that movie is really fucking good. And it is especially good when you're watching it with the original voices, because fucking man, that movie is just awesome. And you definitely need Masako Nozawa playing Goku. It definitely changed a certain section of the movie for me, even more substantively than I would have thought it would. Because basically the whole Goku stretch of the movie where he's fighting Broly, I had a certain disconnect from the character watching the movie in theaters that I thought was maybe because the animation was so much more stylized than I was accustomed to. I was I don't know if I'm into what they're doing with Goku's movements here, but I think it was more that it just didn't fully convince me that the voice was coming in, the sounds, not even just full performed lines, but all the sounds were coming from the character. And then watching it with the Japanese voices sort of solved all of those problems and made the movie feel more seamless to me than the experience I had watching it in the theater.
100%. We both gushed over the fight scenes when this came out in theaters, but I had a totally different experience watching it on this Blu-ray with Japanese voices, because I'm sorry, everyone gets offended when I say this. They didn't fucking animate the movie for a couple guys in Texas to voice it. I'm sorry. If you like your dub, great, enjoy it. They didn't fucking animate it for them. They animated it because they knew Masako Nozawa could do those voices, and they knew Ryo Horikawa could do that, and Bin Shimada. They tear it the fuck up in the last 45 minutes of this movie. Dragon Ball screams are a very precise art, and I don't know if they've ever been better than they are in this movie. I don't know how the hell Masako Nozawa is an 80-year-old woman, and she can still do this with her voice. How can anyone that deep into their life still do these things with their voice? She must be the best trained vocalist in the world. It's crazy, because this is such a visually maximalist, stylistic movie. I think to sell it, you need the characters to be doing that. The English voice actors, other than maybe Chris Sabat, I think Chris Sabat can kind of do it as Vegeta. But other than that, I just don't think they can do that. It's not part of English voice actor training. There's no trope for this in English voice acting, but they know how to do it in Japan. And I think they animated the movie with that in mind, and they voice it with that in mind. And it's just the impact of that fight to me. It is an exponential jump when you have Masako Nozawa and the original cast there doing the voices.
Yeah, it's also just such a good fucking movie.
Yes, the whole
oh my
movie's
God.
great.
Because I usually do not rewatch movies this close to, because it's only been a few months since it was in the theater. But it just like I immediately got sucked into it again. I had forgotten just how much I love the whole prologue section at the beginning of the movie. Like all that stuff is so good. They really like because I'm kind of torn of that. I do really want when Dragon Ball Super comes back to just like move forward with the story. I also would love just like a solid 12 episode season of just some Bardock shit, you know, and totally flesh out that side of what's going on in that movie, because I think the amount that is in the movie is the appropriate amount for the movie. But I just want to see some more Bardock just fucking around on Planet Vegeta and being super cool and doing cool Saiyan shit. I would 100% be down for them just like spending fucking a couple of months just doing that.
I would be too. And oh my god, lest we, ever stop gushing over Masuko Nozawa, her Bardock voice it's always been good. All of her different variants on Goku, all her evil Gokus are great. This one's fascinating though, because Bardock is no longer an evil Saiyan in this movie. He's not like necessarily completely virtuous, but he is more thoughtful. He's kind of dark and brooding and introspective, and the way she like tweaks the performance to that. But also there are just a couple moments, particularly when he's home with Gine, where Goku comes through. Beautiful. Like I already thought that stretch of the movie was gorgeous and affecting, but oh my god, with all the Japanese voices, it's so fucking good.
Yep.
And
it's stellar fucking movie.
Yeah, and Ryusei Nakao as Frieza, always great. Man, he never fails to bring it and like amaze me. And we loved Chris Ayers in the English version, and he is fantastic in it. But man, some of Frieza's laughs in the prologue in this movie are just those spine-tingling Frieza laughs, and then in the second half, he's just so good. I love it so much. All the voice acting is great. Probably worth talking about. This is the first appearance of the new Bulma in Japanese.
Yeah, that's true.
I think her name's Aya Hisakawa, if I remember correctly. But replacing Hiromi Suru, who was the voice of Bulma since day one, passed away last year. It was definitely like I felt like a pang like of anyone else's voice coming out of Bulma's mouth. But she did a really good job, I thought. Bulma has a small role in this, but like she, I think, very much respected Hiromi Tsuru, brought some new things to it. She was very good in the very funny bit Bulma gets about the Dragon Balls. And, those are some of the hardest shoes to step into in this series, and I thought she did a great job.
Yeah, and it was sort of like a relief to me to be like, okay, like we can do this. Like we can continue forward with Bulma being a character, because I think the performance is really well done. And yeah, there's something that's like feels right about keeping that character going forward rather than trying to sort of like push her off to the corner or something and do that, which is, the other sort of tactic you could handle. I think like it worked for me really well in the film. So yeah, it feels good knowing that like we don't have to abandon that character entirely.
Yeah, because Bulma you can't get rid of. They've basically avoided doing anything with Kaio-sama since Joji Yanami left, and I think that's been basically the right call, because I think the replacement narrator on Super was perfect at that. When it came to Kaio, it doesn't feel quite right. They did like one episode with him, but Bulma you can't get rid of Bulma. She's been there since day one. So if you're going to continue Dragon Ball, you have to do something with her, and she was great. Most of the Dragon Ball cast is not in this movie, which is notable, because it's a very limited cast, but everyone's great. Bin Shimada as Broly, that's interesting to me, because he really, it's a different character, but it is still Bin Shimada. And he played all of it. I mean, he's so good at the shouts and stuff. Like, that's part of why Broly works, if he works at all in the early movies, is Bin Shimada can do a mean, shonen anime shout. And he's still very good at that. I think everything he did with Broly's dialogue in this movie and characterization, like the way he plays the speech. In English, Vic Mignogna kind of did it as like Broly's like a little kid. I like Bin Shimada did it like he's an old soul, like he's kind of world-weary almost. And it's really beautiful and lovely. And then I loved Chilai and Limo. They also, like, the English voices they got for those two were fucking dead ringers to the Japanese, which was impressive to me. But yeah, it's amazing cast. It was so good to see it in Japanese. It just felt like, okay, I've seen the movie, I've digested the movie, and I think it is the best Dragon Ball movie. I think the only competition would be Battle of Gods, and even then, like, just as a film, as a cinematic experience, this is just one of my favorite things I've gotten to see in years. I love it.
Yeah, I was pretty confident upon first viewing that it was the best Dragon Ball movie. I'm like doubly so now. Because the other part of the movie that like I knew was good on first viewing, but was something I hadn't paid a huge amount of attention to was the music. And on the second watch through, like I was able to, especially because I just didn't expect going in for it to have that kind of very like theme heavy kind of approach to it. And like Broly's theme, like is used so effectively over the course of the movie in different spots and like different versions of his music. So that was another thing that watching it a second time, I was able to appreciate more what they were doing with the music and where and stuff like that. It's just a fucking awesome movie. People, if you have not watched Dragon Ball Super Broly and you like Dragon Ball, you owe it to yourself to watch this because it is fucking stellar.
It's so good. But yeah, we'll probably talk about it again someday. You want to go ahead to the news, Sean?
Oh yeah, oh boy, what's going on in the news, Jonathan?
You're saying oh boy because there's a lot, not because it's like all bad or anything, right?
No, well, I'm saying oh boy because we've got a lot of news, and oh boy, like outside of this podcast, okay. Oh boy.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, this is always with the caveat, this is the stupid media news we cover, not the, we are not doing a dissection of the Mueller report today, Sean.
Yeah.
What it would
That's
be,
next week.
That's next week. It's our politics podcast where you and I are going to both close our eyes and just scream into the microphone as loudly as possible until we stop feeling things.
Yeah, just like that's actually why I was watching Dragon Ball Super Broly, was to like work up the scream muscles a little bit for next week. Yeah.
Yes. I want to figure out whatever the vocal workout Mosco Nozawa does and then do that myself. Okay. In the stupid news, Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. That is the movie. It is coming this Christmas. They had their Star Wars Celebration event, and they debuted the trailer. When this came out, it was Friday morning, and I was in office hours at school. This is when, as a grad student or professor, you have to sit in your office and wait for people to come, and they never do. and I'm in office hours. I'm going to teach in about an hour, and I'm just waiting for the trailer to come out. So I'm like, I have nothing else to do. I'm going to turn on the panel. Because they had a panel beforehand. It was the most awkward fucking thing, Sean, because they had the entire cast of Star Wars Episode 9, plus J.J. Abrams, plus Kathleen Kennedy. Stephen Colbert was moderating, and they couldn't say a goddamn thing about the movie. Like, I don't know why. Why didn't they show the trailer first and then let them talk about that? But they didn't do any of that. Like, I mean, this was to the point, Sean, where Colbert asked them a question at one point of just like, so JJ, in the last movie, the cast was kind of split up, which they were, right? In The Last Jedi. And he said, will we get to see all these cool people in the movie together in this time? And JJ's like, I really can't tell you. Fuck you, JJ. That is such a coy, shitty answer. Yes, you can tell us if Rey and Finn will be on screen together. Bullshit.
Especially because in the trailer, there is a shot of all of them together. So, yes there will be a part in the movie where all of our main characters are together at the end of this trilogy featuring these characters.
Yes. But anyway, I'll give my short version. I think it's a really good movie trailer. The title baffles me to no end.
Yeah, like I like the trailer. I think part of it is just like I'm so sort of exhausted with Star Wars in general. I don't know what trailer could possibly get me excited because there's too much. Like I just have no investment coming into it because I just do not know what the fuck this movie will be able to do to follow up The Last Jedi. Either in terms of quality or just in terms of like narrative, plot, thematic stuff. I just don't know what there is for this movie to do, or that I'm confident that J.J. Abrams would be able to handle. So like nothing the trailer could do to get me really excited. Ignoring that, I think it is a well put together sort of teaser-y kind of trailer that is. It's like I appreciated that it wasn't just like a 50-second stinger. It is a full 2 minutes. It just doesn't give away almost anything of the plot other than a couple of teases. But the title is fucking stupid. I hate the title. I hate basically every single part of the title other than the of. I think the of is fine. You should probably have an of in there. Basically every other part of the title I do not want. I guess Rise is fine. There could be another context where you could have had Rise. It's sort of a generic subtitle sort of word, but...
The weirdest thing to me is that it's very clearly a play on, we had Return of the Jedi, Revenge of the Sith. Mm-hmm. Why isn't this Rise of the Skywalker?
Yeah, right?
I think that would actually be a good title, because then it's ambiguous whether you're talking about... Because I think everyone's theory at this point is that I don't think they're literally saying that, like, we're going to find out Rey is Luke's daughter, and this is all about the Skywalkers are the only Jedi and they will be forever. I think the theory that this is Skywalker is going to become a bigger like concept in the universe, that's probably it. That could be really cool. Why is it called The Rise of Skywalker? It's a bad arrangement of words. Like, I know this is getting granular, but syntactically, it doesn't come out of the lips well.
Yeah, no, it's just The Rise of Skywalker. Especially because it makes it sound like it's talking about Luke Skywalker to me.
Yeah.
Because that's what a lot of characters called Luke. Like, that's how the Emperor and Darth Vader referred to Luke basically entirely through the original trilogy before you find out that Darth Vader is a Skywalker also. They call him Skywalker. So The Rise of Skywalker, and this is also how I encountered it, was just like it was already out there in the world, and I didn't even know that they were showing the trailer that day. So when I just checked Twitter during my lunch on that Friday, I didn't know what was happening, so I just kept on seeing The Rise of Skywalker. I was like, oh, is this like a comic book series? Is this a novel? Like, I just didn't know what it was until I this is the subtitle for the next movie. What the fuck? The Rise? Because I don't even like the idea of, even if it is the like, oh, Skywalker is like the replacement for the word Jedi or whatever, and we're making us different order of Force wielders. Like, I think I'm not a huge fan of that concept. I don't like the idea of let's like take the name Skywalker and somehow make it even more fundamentally important to the franchise of Star Wars, which is to me like this like weird backwards thing of people being like, no, don't worry, they're not making Rey a Skywalker. They're just making it so we will never get away from the concept of Skywalkers in Star Wars, which is way worse to me. Like, I just think like any implication of the title, I don't think speaks well for the movie. Whether it's that, which I think people are dismissing the idea that he is going to reveal that Rey is somehow biologically a Skywalker too easily. I do not think that that's impossible.
Oh, it could happen, no doubt. But
I just saw too much on Twitter of people being very confident that that was not the way that this could go. I'm like, it's a way that it could go.
Here's what pisses me off, though, Sean. This is the thing about that. I don't really care about what the title says about the movie, because the title is a marketing thing chosen.
It's true.
You know, by this all. You know, sometimes it can line up well with the content of the movie, like The Last Jedi. Sometimes it's like The Force Awakens could have been named anything. The Force Awakens was a good title to like bring back Star Wars. Like, that's why it was chosen. So I don't know.
Star Wars, Here We Go Again is how I would have titled it.
That would have been good. Here's the thing that pisses me off about it, though, Sean, is that title, word for word, syllable for syllable, is designed to make Star Wars fans discuss and debate rabidly online about dumb theories. It is such a trolly title. It will not stand the test of time. Like, in 20 years from now, if people are watching this trilogy again, that title won't make a lot of sense no matter what's in the movie. And I'm confident saying that because the title was designed to get people speculating online, not to reflect anything in the movie. You know what I mean? Like, Revenge of the Sith is a cool title, but it's also, the movie is about the Sith getting fucking revenge, right? Return of the Jedi is about the Jedi returning. Like, you know, all of these things. I just doubt there is a world where The Rise of Skywalker, unless it is about, like, either Kylo or Rey taking over the galaxy and they are actually Skywalkers, we find out. I mean, I know Kylo is technically, although it's weird because he doesn't go by that name and never has, and whatever. His last names would have been Organa or Solo, so whatever. Anyway, like, this is the other thing that just, on a tangent here, Sean, Leia never used the name Skywalker, so when everyone's like, Kylo's a Skywalker, I'm like, no, he's an Organa. Because she very consciously chose never to use the name of her murderous douchebag father.
Yeah, because when I saw all the rampant speculation about the title, there were a lot of people being like, "Oh, it must be referring to Kylo Ren," and my immediate thing was like, "No, it can't." And there's like, "Oh, I guess technically, technically he could be considered a Skywalker," but I'm with you that it's like that's never where I go, because I don't feel like he has ever tried to claim that, like, as a character. That's never been a thing, and then two, like, because he's related to Han and Leia and not like directly like father son something to Luke, I don't immediately connect this. Like, oh yeah, I guess genetically speaking, he's related to the Skywalker line.
Yeah, it's so yeah. It also just, I feel like, weirdly ignores Leia's agency and everything. But whatever. It's just, that's the thing about the title that annoys me. Take the title out of it. I like the trailer. It's what I wanted to see. It is Rey is back, front and center. If I have any complaint about The Last Jedi, it's that there's so much going on in that movie. Rey gets lost in the shuffle in the third act, particularly. Not, I think, in the first two. She's front and center. I think that first scene of her in the desert, the speeder's coming, she does the flip. Very cool. Well directed. Love that. All of the little clips past that, really great, I think, compositions. It felt very, like, appropriately Star Warsy. It has a different kind of color palette than the last two movies. It's basically what I wanted. It's a lot of the characters together. It feels like the new generation is pushed front and center. You have Mark Hamill doing a little bit of narration as, like, the elder statesman, which also confirms that he's in the movie. That had been kind of back and forth. Yeah, and then, so I liked all of that. If I have any complaint with that, it's that, why does Rey not have a new lightsaber yet?
Because we can't get away from it. Because they decided to make this trilogy of movies so closely connected to the original trilogy of movies that we cannot fucking escape the gravitational pull, and Disney doesn't seem to want to.
That's just why. I was telling this to my brother. It's not even Luke's lightsaber. That's the thing that pisses me off. Is it's Anakin's lightsaber. Luke has a lightsaber and it's green. And if you have affection for the original trilogy, I associate Luke with green, not with blue, right?
Yeah,
because that's the one he builds that is his. Why? Like, if Rey had a training lightsaber, that's the one she should have. And then the third movie, she should build her own. Now, she still might. For all we know, they could have CGI'd in the old lightsaber into that scene because they don't want to reveal the new lightsaber design. Disney does that with movies now. But, it just... If we get through this whole trilogy and Rey never has a new lightsaber, I will be very sad.
Yeah, and honestly, some of that stuff, I think, is one of the reasons why I'm just so lukewarm on this, is, like, I feel like Disney has never given the new cast and, like, the new characters quite enough time, or, like, room in these movies for me to fully invest myself in them. Because it's something where it's like, I see Rey and I like Rey, and I see Finn and Poe and I like them, but I'm not like a, yes, they're back, like I get to see them again kind of thing, because I feel like there's not enough, like, those characters have not had enough, like, space. They haven't been given enough oxygen to fully, like, grow in these two movies, compared to if I see a trailer for a Marvel movie and Thor's in it, I'm like, fucking yeah, I get to see Thor again, because Thor got to have his own movies. Whereas Rey has always been kind of in this weird space where it's like, yeah, she's the new main character, but there we have this whole, like, big ensemble new cast of characters, plus all the returning characters that have so much weight associated with them because of the whole franchise, like, history to it, that I just feel like coming into the third movie, I still don't feel like I really know who these characters are yet. And that's very frustrating, because I want to really be excited, because I am yeah, it's cool, they're here, but it's not like a fuck yeah, I get to see Rey's, like, another adventure with these characters. It's frustrating to me, because I just feel like they've mishandled it in this weird way that I wouldn't have really expected.
Yeah, and I mean, it's well established. I think I've liked the new movies more than you. I've liked the characters more. But I have a similar feeling, which for me is that they're talking about how this is the conclusion to the trilogy, and I don't feel that. Like, The Last Jedi is not part 2. It feels like The Last Jedi is the passing the baton movie, and if anything, this should be part 1 of Rey's trilogy now,
Yes,
like,
exactly. That's how I feel. Yeah. 100%.
So I just don't know if you can do everything you need to do to wrap this up and feel like it was their story. We'll see. I am perfectly willing to be open until the movie actually comes out. Last thing, the Emperor does show up at the end of the trailer laughing, at least his voice. What do you think of that?
I think it's dumb.
Okay.
I think it is exactly what I was just talking about.
Yeah.
These characters will never get to be their own fucking characters. They will all they're going to end the series of movies with them being entirely subjugated to the cast of the original trilogy.
Yeah. No, I get that. And I mean, to be fair, pretty much every extension of the original trilogy has had a reappearance of Palpatine. The books did it.
Yeah.
The Lucas's original drafts of the sequel trilogy, whether they were written pre or post prequels, always had Palpatine in them. Like, the versions he handed off to Lucasfilm reportedly had Palpatine in them. So, like, this is not a new idea to do a sequel trilogy where Palpatine comes back in some form. I hope the way it happens is it's like, I think there's a way you could do it where he's like a spectral force somewhere in the movie, but if it's Ian McDiarmid front and center as the new big bad, because this has to be about Kylo as the villain. Like, that's the role he stepped into at the end of the last movie, you know? So I just don't know.
I don't take anything for granted. Like, because for me, part of it feels like we don't have Snoke. Like, because for me, Kylo Ren isn't quite enough to be the big bad because he's too incompetent to be the big bad for the movie. Like the final confrontation should be between Kylo Ren and Rey, but he's not big enough a presence to fill the shoes of like a mastermind sort of character, which I feel like is what you kind of need for a trilogy like this.
So that's why you bring back Palpatine.
Yeah, that's why you bring back Palpatine, but bringing back Palpatine brings up so much with him that I feel like would be best left alone and you move on with your own new stuff. But yeah, I don't know. A lot of people are very excited, and it's cool to have Ian McDiarmid back. Like, there's a part of me that's like fuck yeah, I get to see another, even if it's just like 5 minutes in the movie or something, who knows? I get to see another performance of Palpatine by Ian McDiarmid. Like, there's a part of me as a Star Wars fan that is like very excited for that, and then there's a part of me as a Star Wars fan that's very upset with myself for being very excited for something that, like, in the scope of things, is probably a bad creative decision for the franchise as a whole.
You know, I think if nothing else, after this movie, good or bad, we're done for a little while. Kathleen Kennedy did say on stage they're going to take a break in films after this. There's not going to be one next year, probably not the year after that. They're focusing on the Disney Plus series right now. So the first one is The Mandalorian, which they showed off. I have not seen the footage of it. They did not release it officially, but there's cam footage. It sounds really cool, I will say, The Mandalorian. Yeah. It's got
I did watch the cam footage because it was like, fuck it, why not? And, obviously, like, it's kind of hard to tell how good it is when you're looking at cam footage. But, like, the basic concept of what they're going for with, like, this kind of, like, Star Wars Western thing, which is not a new concept, but it looks very well executed. And I was kind of rolling my eyes a little bit at the pitch of the series, and then seeing that footage is like, no, they might be able to pull this off.
Yeah. And Jon Favreau is more than just like the figurehead, like who put his name on it. He directed the pilot. He wrote some of it. It's got a lot of good people behind the scenes. The cast is fantastic. Pedro Pascal he was in one season of Game of Thrones and everyone loves him from it, is The Mandalorian, which I think is awesome. It sounds really cool. And that's the kind of thing that I think would be a good thing to do in the meantime, is maybe just look at the edges of Star Wars on TV, do some of that. We know we're getting the last season or movie or whatever it's going to be of Clone Wars. They're planning more Star Wars movie stuff in the background. I think once Episode 9 is done, maybe this will have been the necessary throat clearing Disney had to do to bring Star Wars back, and then maybe they can learn from a lot of this and do a lot of new cool stuff, Because we know Rian Johnson is still in the wings planning his thing, and Rian Johnson set Unleashed on something in Star Wars where he is not bound by the larger story excites me an awful lot.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, I'm like, hopefully once we have like this trilogy of movies kind of done with, I hope that Disney takes that as an opportunity to be like a Rian Johnson, like, do whatever you want, and hopefully whatever he wants is, let's go like 500 years in the future, or let's go way into the past and kind of get away from the stuff we know, because I would love to just see the same thing that happened when the prequel movies happened. Like, let's have a whole new era open up for Star Wars. That's a whole new designs for ships and all that kind of stuff. Like, I want to see new stuff in Star Wars. Because it's going back to this trailer, I do not want another trailer for a Star Wars movie open on a desert planet. I want something different.
There will definitely be more opening on a desert planet. I think we can guarantee you that, Sean. But anyway, let's actually jump ahead to the next news item, Sean, while we're on the Disney topic. And let's talk about Disney Plus.
All right.
Because they unveiled this was 2 weeks ago, this was on last week's outline, but I still think it's relevant to talk about, is Disney Plus has been fully unveiled. This is Disney's streaming service. They did a big, like, Apple-esque event. It is launching November 12th of this year for $6.99 a month, or $69.99 for an annual subscription. These are US dollars, obviously. It will have all of the Disney, Marvel, Star Wars content, obviously. It'll have The Mandalorian will be there day one. It sounds like they're not doing a release all the episodes at once thing. It's going to be like a weekly launch. Year two, so the 2020 stuff, is they're planning Marvel miniseries like Loki, which will have Tom Hiddleston, and the so bad it's good named show WandaVision, which will be a show about Red Witch or Scarlet Witch and Vision from the Avengers. I feel like that's one of those titles where someone said it in the room and then they couldn't come up with one that was more memorable, so they went with WandaVision. Anyway, the service is aiming to have 7,500 episodes of current and off-air TV shows, 25 original series, 10 original movies and specials, 400 library movies, and 100 recent theatrical films online within the first year. The app itself has more or less complete feature parity with Netflix, including 4K and HDR content, aiming to launch on as many platforms as possible. And in a surprise announcement, it will be the new exclusive streaming home for all 30 seasons of The Simpsons, which is a pretty amazing thing because if you didn't know, The Simpsons has never been on a streaming platform properly. The closest we've had is there's an app called Simpsons World, which does have all of The Simpsons, but to access it, you have to have a cable package and have FXX, the obscure sister network of FX. So it was very hard to access. I had it for like a month once. The app wasn't very good either. So I'm very happy that The Simpsons will be gettable for $7 a month. And I gotta say, this sounds like a pretty great platform Disney is making. This is the first time I've ever heard someone pitch a streaming platform and thought Netflix should probably look out.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's both, like, very enticing, particularly as someone who's, like, I like, because, I mean, I will definitely at least get, like, a month of this when all the Clone Wars stuff is on there, because I'm going to fucking watch that. I will probably at least try The Mandalorian. So it's like the promise of, since Disney owns Marvel and Star Wars, which are two of my favorite franchises, like, I will end up, I don't know if I'll like be like, oh, I'll have a subscription year round or anything, but like every once in a while I'll pick it up for like a month and watch what I want to watch. That seems absolutely inevitable. But it's also sort of frightening, the like, oh fuck, right? They have all, like, there's a part of me that's like, did you just destroy all of Fox just so you could put all of Simpsons? Because that like makes, like, that gets everybody into your service. Like, it doesn't matter who you fucking are. It's like, oh, we have all 3 seasons of The Simpsons. Well, shit, that's a good fucking deal.
Yeah, I mean, it's two things for me. It's the breadth of content they're promising, because I think there's a version of this where Disney could have been a lot stingier and held a lot back. And, like, they're not promising every Disney movie ever is going to be there day one, and obviously it's not. Like, there was news just today, no, they're not putting Song of the South on there. Of course they weren't, but, like, you know, there's clearly some stuff that's not going to be on there. But they're promising a lot. All of their theatrical movies are going to go right to this streaming service. And for a company that has as much as they have, this is just so convenient. Like, I have been collecting the Marvel Blu-rays, but I'm missing some, and I'm behind at a point where, like, I'm never going to collect all of them. And now I don't need to, which is nice, because I think I will probably, if there's Marvel movies I really love, like Black Panther, I'll pick up a Blu-ray, but otherwise, they're all going to be in one place. That's great. We've never been able to just watch all 20 Marvel movies in one place. There's never been one app that had all the Star Wars movies or all the Disney animated classics. Like, that's nice. And also the price point, $7 a month, that they might as well have just had a fuck you Netflix sign up there, because that is very, I mean, they're clearly going to be eating some money here to get people in, and I'm sure they will rise costs eventually, but that's a more than fair entry price for this kind of thing.
Yeah, and going back to the point about all the Marvel movies being here, like, I'm actually kind of annoyed that they're not launching it like a month or so in front of Endgame, because if they had, I probably would have been like fuck it, here we go. Like, there's a bunch of Marvel movies I've only seen once. Fucking let's watch Iron Man 3 again. Like let's go through the whole rigmarole. It's been a long time since I saw Thor 1. Like, let's just do it. Because like you, I have a couple of those movies. Like, I have Thor Ragnarok on Blu-ray because that one's very good. And stuff like that. But most of those movies I don't own on Blu-ray, and I don't want to spend the money and time getting them on Blu-ray on the off chance I don't want to watch them again. Because I also am not going to own all of them.
Right.
I'm not going to go get Incredible Hulk on Blu-ray, you know. This is like that. I'm never going to do that. So if they had done this like a month ago, I would probably be right now, like, have just finished watching Iron Man 3 and be like, I'm going to watch all of these before Endgame comes out. because I was toying with that idea and I very quickly gave it up.
Yeah, I think the reason they can't do it yet is because they still like have a deal with Netflix that I think expires over the summer, and Netflix has Infinity War right now.
Yeah.
So, I think, Disney has historically been a company that made it hard to see their stuff. They would put things back in the vault. They had limited print runs of all their physical media. Their physical media never fucking goes on sale. This is a huge shift in strategy for Disney. And I think for the amount of content they have, it's the strategy that makes sense in this day and age. And again, this is the first time I've ever heard of a streaming app where I'm saying to myself, Netflix probably has genuine competition now.
Yeah.
So, all right. You want to do some video game stuff, Sean?
Yep.
We got
What's going on with video games?
Well, this is half news, half review, which is that the Joker DLC came to Smash Bros. This week. There was a surprise little mini. It wasn't a Nintendo Direct, but it was like a Nintendo Direct. They did a 20-minute video on Tuesday night, and then Wednesday night the DLC theoretically came out. We'll talk about that in a minute. But they basically announced that Joker was coming to Persona 5, or Joker from Persona 5 we knew was going to be in Smash. We didn't know quite when. They said it's coming tomorrow. They showed him off. They showed off the pack that was coming out. They also showed off version 3.0, which is adding for free for everyone a new stage builder and video editor stuff. So the DLC comes out Wednesday night, the 17th. But in so doing, it completely crashed the Nintendo eShop, and it took until about midnight where I was for the eShop to come back up and be able to download the DLC. I have to say, Sean, I have never seen paid DLC for a video game crash a game company's servers. Do you remember any scenarios of that?
No, and I wonder how much of it is how absurdly popular Smash Brothers is, and how much of it is how far behind Nintendo is on their network infrastructure. I imagine it's a combination of both those things.
But it didn't crash when Smash Bros. The game came out. So when video games come, when Mario Odyssey came out or something, the eShop didn't go down. I have not seen the eShop go down like this other than on Christmas in recent years. So yeah, it probably is a little of column A, little of column B, but I think it's Smash Bros. Is popular. The appetite is clearly there for Persona. If this is not a message from God that Atlas needs to get every piece of Persona content they fucking can onto Switch, I don't know what is. But yeah, let's go through what's in the pack. So the pack comes with Joker, the character, who has both normal dungeon mask variants and his normal school costume from the day, the Shujin Academy costume. It has a new stage, which is Mementos from Persona 5. It's a really cool stage that is a normal sort of Smash Brothers 2-tier stage that is in front of a big Mementos backdrop with all this Persona art. All the characters from Persona 5 come in and out. The cat bus runs all around. And it also has variants for Persona 3 and 4, depending on what music you're listening to, because it has 11 music tracks, which is a lot, including 3 new remixes for Beneath the Mask, I'll Face Myself from Persona 4, and Aria of the Soul from all of them. And those remixes, Sean, are so good. Have you listened to those yet?
Yes, I have. They're very good.
The I'll Face Myself one in particular is it's so good to fight to. And there are 12 new spirits for Spirit Mode that are all Persona themed, so you can unlock Igor and all the Persona 5 cast and Caroline and Justine, who are the ice climbers when you fight them, which made me laugh.
That's pretty good.
When you get the Morgana spirit, Sean, who is Morgana in Smash Bros?
Oh, I immediately just thought of Jigglypuff.
It's Pikachu. This is Ikoue Otani.
That makes sense. Yeah, Pikachu. Yeah. No, that makes sense.
So they have that little connection. The pack also, you have all this new voiced content from Morgana and Futaba. I've also heard some from the other Persona 5 characters. It kind of comes in at random. It's fantastic. For a $6 DLC, less if you get the overall season pass, that's a lot of content, especially for fighting games, which can be pretty stingy with DLC. And I have to say, Sean, Joker is now one of my favorite Smash characters. It is such a good fighter. The way he works is you start out and it's just Joker. He has a gun, which is your special move, and he has a knife, which is all your attacks. And he can do flips and stuff. He can do this little grappling hook to jump back onto the stage. But he's not super effective until you fill this gauge at the bottom. I think it's the rage meter or something, or the rebellion meter. It's something like that. And then he summons his persona, which is Arsene, and you get Arsene, and then all of Joker's moves are roughly the same, but they're way more powerful, and there's more to do with them. And he's very fun to fight as. He's very acrobatic. He has this side special move where he shoots fire and different other like spells from Persona. And especially once you get Arsene in there, it's so fun. And Mementos is easily my favorite of the new stages in Smash Ultimate. It is so freaking gorgeous. It is so full of little Persona references. When you do the Persona 3 and 4 variants, they have all these references to those games in there. All the music is great. Just getting to play Smash Brothers with that music is a gift from the heavens. They could not have done a better job. With Joker in particular, you have like his final smash is just straight up one of the all-out attacks from Persona 5. It's all the animation. It's the fucking finishing screen with Joker. It's Morgana's lines. It's everything. If you win as Joker, it does the victory animation from Persona 5 with the music. And if you win as Joker on the Persona 3 or 4 variant, it does the Persona 3 or 4 victory music. So there's really 14 Persona tracks in this game. They could not have rolled out the red carpet more lovingly for Persona. And if Persona 5 is somehow not coming to Nintendo Switch, I'm very confused by all of this.
Yeah, I do love that, like, because a lot of the stuff you're describing, if people have not seen that video they did on Tuesday, like, it's mostly in there. Because, like, I watched that and all that stuff's in there. And there was, like, this part of this, like, I can't believe they're being so dedicated to 3 video games. It's because I wasn't expecting to see any Persona 3 and 4 stuff. That's like, it's, you know, obviously there's nowhere near as much fan servicey stuff as there's Persona 5, because you have all the characters in the background and everything. But there's a good deal of it for Persona 3 and 4. It's like, these are 3 video games that are currently not available on the Switch in any way, shape, or form. And it's kind of amazing. Or, like, not even just on the Switch, on any video Nintendo platform. The closest you have are the Persona Q games, but they don't have any Persona 5 stuff in those yet, other than, I guess Persona Q2 is not over here yet, but it's in Japan. But so it's like you have like a very tenuous connection through those 3DS games, but on the like Switch with the main games for Persona 3, 4, and 5, nope, those are not on there.
Yeah, it's weird, and I think we can say with some certainty Persona 5 is coming, we just don't know in what form. And then, I mean, again, I think Atlas would be crazy not to put Persona 4 Golden on Switch. It would sell so many fucking copies. Clearly, like, the hunger is there. RPGs do incredibly well on the Switch. Persona would... Again, Nintendo rolled out the red carpet in Smash Bros. Here. It's such a loving tribute. It's really beautifully done. It put a huge smile on my face. And now I can play Smash Brothers with Mass Destruction and Lotus Juice rapping in my ears. And it's fucking awesome. I love it, Sean.
A question that I think I just know the answer to, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Is there any way to play it and have the Japanese Persona 5 character voices?
I have not done it yet, but all you have to do is switch the game to Japanese. It also switches the text, but it's if you have any basic reading ability of katakana, you'll be fine. And then I know for every other character in the game, it switches to their Japanese voice, so it must for Persona. It's a different narrator and everything, so I assume they're all in there, yeah.
Yeah, because when I started watching that video, because I think I started watching it from a link I got on Twitter, it brought me to the English language version of the video from Tuesday. Like, I can't watch that. So I went to the trusted Japanese Nintendo YouTube channel because the Japanese version had the Japanese voices.
Yeah, the way most Nintendo games work these days is it's just one download for the entire world, and you pick your language, or it auto-detects based on your system. And with Smash, you just go into the options menu and switch it. It's very easy. Nice. Yeah, so like if they ever bring Goku to Smash Brothers, which they still need to do, if for some insane reason they don't have Masuko Nozawa just as Goku in all versions, I will be able to fix that, and I'm happy. Yeah. So, but no, it could not be any better done. I'm so impressed by it. It's such good DLC. If this is indicative of what we're getting out of this season pass for Smash Bros., oh my god, I can't wait. Because the rumor is the next one is Erdrick/Loto from Dragon Quest. Yeah. If they rolled out the red carpet like this for Persona, an RPG series that basically has 3 major entries that anyone knows or talks about, imagine what they do for fucking Dragon Quest, Sean. How exciting is that going to be?
Yeah, I'm honestly kind of surprised that they didn't end that video with like a teaser for who the next fighter was going to be, because it does feel like the momentum has picked up again, because people are like really into this DLC.
Yeah.
I'm curious when, I guess probably it'll be E3 since they haven't teased it yet, when they will be like, okay, and here's what we're doing, whether it's Erdrick or put Goku in the game, you bastards, or whoever. Yes. I'm curious to see like what that's going to look like.
Yeah, I am too, and they've got to pick up the pace because they say they're going to have it all out by February of 2020. They have 4 more to do. Like they've got to get on it pretty soon. I will say they also did put out Mii fighter costumes for the Persona 3 and 4 protagonists and Teddy and Morgana, and I picked up the protagonist ones. And I put those on Mii fighters, and you put them in there, and it's great because it looks like you've got the Persona 3 and 4 protagonists running around too, and that's very fun. And there's enough voices that you can pick from that I could find ones that vaguely sounded like them, which is easy because in the games all they do is grunt and yell Persona names. So there you go. So if you want to, you can have that. I also bought, because these are like 70 cents a piece, and I just had gold coins, which is the free eShop money. I did get the Teddy headgear for a Mii, and that is funny to put on. I have like a Mii who's like this old bearded dude, and I put a Teddy helmet on him. It was very fun.
Well done.
Yeah. All right, you want to move on?
Yeah. What else have we got?
Xbox has announced finally their all-digital edition of the Xbox One S, known as the Xbox One SAD edition, because it acronyms. It is the Xbox One S all-digital edition, and somehow no one at Microsoft realized that acronyms to the word SAD. It is a $250 Xbox One that has no disk drive. It's very small. It comes out May 7th. Microsoft claims they want to keep this $50 below the normal Xbox One S that does have a disk drive, but that is emphatically not the case so far, because right now you can go get an Xbox One S anywhere for $199, the Minecraft bundle or one of the other basic bundles. So this is $50 more than the cheapest Xbox One S. I don't really get the plan here. Even if they were keeping the promise of it being $50 below, $50 seems like awfully scant savings to me for giving up your Blu-ray drive and everything you can do and save with that, such as old discs and used games and backwards compatibility and all that. Sean, why is Microsoft doing this? We thought this idea made sense when we thought they were going to do it sensically, but they didn't.
Yeah. No, they put it really well on the Giant Beast cast this week when they said the all-digital Xbox One made a lot of sense until they did it. It's just like, because it's so bizarre. It's so like, one, it starts with that Xbox One SAD, which cannot be stressed enough how absurd it is. Because there's so many ways. There were so many ways that you could have named this thing, and most of them don't result in people calling your console SAD. I am personally kind of sad that they didn't just go with the diskless Xbox One, because then when you try to say that in conversation, everyone just calls it the dickless Xbox One, and that would have been great. Because that is kind of what it feels like they've made. They made a dickless Xbox One that is as expensive, if not even maybe a little bit more expensive than the Xbox One S, and it has no advantage. There's no plus side. The only plus side would be if it was really cheap because they ripped the Blu-ray out. Which obviously is not, I assume it's not even that you're making that many savings on it. But from the perspective of the consumer, there's no reason to pick up an all-digital version of a console other than it to be a lot cheaper than the version that has a disc drive in it. So it's just very peculiar to me.
It's going to be so confusing on store shelves because, especially if they're not keeping the $50 promise, this is just going to be, you're going to walk into Best Buy, try to buy an Xbox One, and they're like, well, wait, what's the difference between this and this? Well, this one's cheaper and you get more. Well, then why does this one exist? So you don't have to use discs. But do I have to use discs on the other one? No, but the disc drive is there if you need to. Like, it's so weird. This is the PSP Go all over again. If you don't remember, the PSP Go was the revision of the PSP that got rid of the UMD drive in the PSP. So it was all digital, but it was with a smaller screen, and the thing like clamped together so like the controls came out of the bottom. And everyone agreed it was a worse version of the PSP. It was a little smaller, which I guess was nice, but you also got less screen size, and it cost like twice as much. And at the time, not all PSP games were available digitally. In fact, the Kingdom Hearts one has never been made available digitally. So like, it's not as bad as that, but it's in the ballpark. It's just bizarre. Like, it even says on the box, like, one of the advantages is disc-free gaming. And it's like, you can do disc-free gaming now. I've never bought a physical media for my Xbox One except Halo the Master Chief Collection. It's so bizarre to me.
Yeah, it is because, like, disc-free gaming has been like a bullet point since the Xbox 360 and the PS3, because all new games since then have been available digitally. Maybe with like a handful of weird, obscure exceptions, all games are released physically and digitally. Or not all of the games are released physically, but all games are at least released on the fucking digital storefronts. And so it's like all digital gaming has been an option for over 10 years. But it has never been the only option. And so, like, you trying to tout that as, like, oh, yeah, you can finally play video games without a disc, and that's the only way you can play them on this more expensive version of this console. It just feels like Microsoft got their wires crossed or something. Like, they've been making so many really smart, sharp moves with the Xbox for the past few years and really turned all that around. And then this feels like it was, like, in the back burner. Like, this feels like 2013 Microsoft put this out. It's like, what the fuck is this? Where did this come from?
The only way this would make sense to me is if they were replacing the Xbox One S with this and saying, okay, if you're a casual gamer, you want the cheaper version, it's the S. The S now no longer has a disk drive, and we've theoretically made it a little cheaper. And then the Xbox One X is where you go if you want discs. I still think that would be weird business strategy, but it would at least make this have some sort of logic. Now it's just like they've got 3 Xbox Ones. One of them is called the Sad Xbox. Right now, I mean, let's be honest, they're all sad Xboxes because the Xbox One is a really shitty brand, but like, wow, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, but this is the saddest Xbox of them all.
All right, we had another Kotaku report on BioWare these last 2 weeks. This time, following up Jason Schreier's bombshell report on the development of Anthem, we got one on the development of Dragon Age 4. And I have to be honest, Sean, it's been so long since this report came out, I don't remember everything that was in it, but I remember it didn't look so good for our friends at BioWare. You know, the basic takeaways being that Dragon Age 4 has been in development for a long time. It got canceled. We knew those basics. They are trying to build a new version with sort of live game elements, but it is still very much in the planning stages. It's very fluid. And I think our next news item will also play into this a little bit, because I think things could change based on some other BioWare or EA games coming out. But it feels like Dragon Age 4 is very much in flux and could be more so with what's happened to Anthem.
Yeah, and the like sort of the heartbreaking thing about the report is that it seems like the original like sort of team and pitch for Dragon Age 4, which to be fair was like very early in development, and who knows whether or not had they been able to like sort of continue on without being siphoned off to Anthem, whether or not that game would have come to fruition or been good. But the idea of this like really focused, smaller scale Dragon Age that was really about like choices and being kind of like a more kind of almost like classic RPG in some ways, and focusing in on being able to make different choices that really changed the direction of the story, and making it so that the story's small enough in scale that you could play through the game multiple times without it being like 100 hours every playthrough. And so you could, an average person could reasonably see multiple different versions of the game, and the choices being drastic enough that it was worthwhile to do so. Like, that sounds like a cool fucking pitch to take Dragon Age in from someone who was kind of bored with Inquisition by the end of it. And so hearing that that's what they were doing, like they were picking what sounded like the smartest possible direction for the continuation of Dragon Age, and then finding out in the same sentence basically that that version of the game is dead, is a super bummer.
Yeah, and you know, they talk about how there are some positives to what they have right now. Like, they're using a lot of Anthem's tools and code base. They were able to get a promise from management that in the balance sheet they'd be starting from scratch, not burdened with like the money and time investment that the earlier version already had. So, you know, they have some leeway going into this, but like Schreier is careful to note that like there was that tease at the Game Awards last year, but I don't know if we would trust it yet, because it is such in flux as a game. And, you know, I think Anthem, even since that 2018 Game Awards thing, has had to pull more and more people onto it. So, you know, people are getting ready to work on this game, but it doesn't seem like people really know what it's going to be. It doesn't know whether they're going to be able to overcome all the depression and anxiety that's come from all the crunch and just the bad management. And they still have to fucking use Frostbite on this. It's sad, because Dragon Age kind of is like the last man standing in BioWare's portfolio. And it really does sound like what they were making before Anthem was so promising. And this game's as live service component, you know, I still, Destiny figured it out, and even then their big corporate manager wasn't happy with it. I just don't know what hope there is. It's such a weird thing that is killing the industry.
Yeah, and it was like that. Like the Anthem report was very fascinating to read. This one was just kind of like heartbreaking to me as someone who really loves BioWare, to be like, oh fuck, they were doing it, and then Anthem happened. It's like, well, shit. Yeah.
So here's the thing, though, Sean. Last week we also learned about Jedi Fallen Order. This is the new Star Wars game being made by Respawn, the makers of Titanfall, the people who made Modern Warfare originally when they were at Infinity Ward before they all got fired. But Jedi Fallen Order was shown off at Star Wars Celebration. They did a cinematic trailer. They announced that it is coming November 15th for Xbox, PS4, PC, and they were very clear. Like Vince Zampinella got on stage and said, it is a single-player game. It has no multiplayer element. It has no microtransactions. It has no loot boxes. It is running on Unreal Engine 4. It is the anti-EA game. They were very pointed about all of it. What's going on at EA? It's very interesting to me that like they let this Star Wars project do everything different, and BioWare is over here languishing. And I guess the hope is, if I'm hoping right now, I hope Jedi Fallen Order is great. I hope it sells 1 billion fucking copies, and I hope it completely changes EA's entire business model. I don't know if any of that will happen, but it's glad that one team is getting to do it right.
Yeah, I think part of that is, and I'm a little bit fuzzy on the timeline, so I might be getting some of these details incorrect, but I want to say that this game was like well in development before EA actually owned Respawn. Because Respawn Entertainment existed for several years. Like Titanfall 1 and I think Titanfall 2 both came out, or maybe EA bought Respawn a little bit before Titanfall 2.
No, Titanfall 2 was still independent. The EA acquisition was after that.
Okay, yeah. So, Respawn, while EA published both Titanfall 1 and 2, they did not actually own Respawn, and it wasn't until after Titanfall 2 that EA actually purchased Respawn. So that means that this game must have been in development for at least a year or two before that. Because we also know that because this is a separate team, so this game was being developed concurrently with Titanfall 2 because Respawn is a 2-team developer, with one team being the Titanfall people that also made Apex, and then this team led by Stig Asmussen, who was the game director on God of War 3, which that game came out forever ago now, but that's kind of what he's been working on, is this stuff. So this game has been in development for a while. So I suspect that that's one of the reasons why it is so it feels so different in EA's current portfolio, is because I'm guessing a lot of those decisions were already made, and it made sense to sort of set that in stone rather than try to drastically change the course of a game that was already well under development to make it have loot boxes or something in it, especially after everything happened with Battlefront 2.
Well, that's the thing.
Smartest thing for EA would be to back the fuck away from all that shit as fast as possible.
If the Battlefront 2 thing hadn't happened, though, they would have loaded this up with all of that, right? I mean,
it's possible. It's hard to say.
So here's the timeline, by the way, Sean. Titanfall 2 was October 2016. EA bought bought Respawn in November 2017.
Okay.
And then Respawn was radio silent for a while after that merger. And then they came back at E3 last year, and we saw they talked about this. We got Apex earlier this year. So they've clearly been working on a lot of stuff, and it was a $400 million acquisition. So clearly, EA's invested a lot in them. This was one of my questions is, Respawn has 3 games in development. They have Apex Legends, they have whatever the next Titanfall is, and they have Jedi Fallen Order. That's a lot for a studio that's only shipped 2 games. And I'm not doubting that they can do it. It's just clearly EA's made an investment because they wouldn't have been able to do that on their own. So our theory is that they were working as a third party for EA on Star Wars before this, and now they just brought them in-house, probably because they liked what they were seeing. I mean, the game does look promising. It's just a cinematic trailer, but they sound pretty confident about it.
Yeah, it's an interesting trailer because we knew this about the game beforehand in that very bizarre E3 moment with Vince Zampella just in the audience, just being our game's called Jedi Fallen Order. It'll be coming out sometime. I don't know. We're working on it, which was very funny and very strange. But in that section, he talked about how it was set between episodes 3 and 4, which is one of the things about the trailer that again, it's just a like full sense of Star Wars fatigue for me at this point. Of like yeah, we've been seeing this for a while. Like it's the same kind of setting that fucking Force Unleashed had in like 2008 or something. And so it's the setup is you are some like weird Jedi dude who survived Order 66 from the end of Episode 3 and has been living in obscurity since, hiding from the Empire. Something happens, a Sith Inquisitor, which you see some of those characters from Star Wars Rebels. This is the same basic design they used in Rebels, so that was kind of cool to see them kind of borrowing that element. But a Sith Inquisitor who is basically a like elite Jedi hunter kind of character that the Emperor has, seems to find this guy and sets it to be like, oh fuck, I guess I have to do some Jedi shit now and fight and do all that. And there's a part of me watching that there's just why are you not just like playing as Ahsoka or Kanan from Star Wars Rebels in this game? Because this is literally just Kanan's story from Star Wars Rebels. Who Kanan's one of the main characters. He's the main Jedi dude in Star Wars Rebels. This is 100% what his story is. So there's a part of me watching this being like, why can't I just be Kanan? Like Kanan's really cool. Like I already really like Kanan more than like weird blonde white boy Jedi guy. Like Kanan's white, but Kanan's got like a ponytail and a beard and he's cool. This dude's just like milquetoast Jedi man. I want to be Kanan, or I want to be Ahsoka, who also has like a similar situation, which that's not reasonable for me to like. I would never expect that, like actually from this game. But there's a part of me, since I've been immersed in that part of the Star Wars stuff for a while with the Rebels show, there's something a little bit tedious about seeing them cover like what looks like the exact same beats as that show did.
I haven't even watched Rebels, and I kind of thought that. Also, why hasn't anyone made an Ahsoka game? That would sell like fucking game. People love Ahsoka. They should do that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think it's kind of hard to judge Jedi Fallen Order so far because we've seen zero gameplay. I trust it will play well. Respawn, these guys know how to make a game. Like I have no worries about that. You know, they've never made anything that did not play impeccably well. You were talking about Apex Legends just a couple weeks ago, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I have no worries about that. The story, though, does strike me as like, okay, of course, it's between 3 and 4, and you're a fucking Jedi, and you've got a lightsaber, and Sith people are hunting you. I fall asleep watching it. It's just like, it looks nice. It's very confident. It looks good, but like, I want something else. Because the other thing is that nothing significant can happen in this story. Because
yeah, exactly.
I know that because I've seen Star Wars Episode 4, and the world was not saved. In fact, that's fairly pointed. That's why you need Luke. So, like, just go somewhere else in the timeline. Go to a different planet where, like, at the end, you will feel a sense of accomplishment. That's what the Amy Hennig thing was doing that we'll never get to see. You know, the Visceral Games version, I feel like, would have been more of that kind of thing. And it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's this, but within the coloring, you know, box that I feel like Disney has let people color within in the last couple of years, this sounds interesting. Sure as shit looks better than Battlefront 1 and 2.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I was hoping to be swept away by that cinematic trailer more than I was, because the trailer itself was kind of tedious to me. But like, I so desperately want a good single player Star Wars game. It's been so long, Jonathan.
I know.
It's been so fucking long since we've had a good Star Wars game of any kind, but especially something that's like a good, like, third-person action game where you play as a Jedi. Like, there's a lot of really fucking awesome games like the Jedi Knight games that are like that, and I would love to see something else. Like, it was one of the things when I was playing Sekiro, it made me think of a lot because of the way the sword combat works in that game, of like, fucking have From Software make a fucking Star Wars game.
Oh my god,
like, the way they do melee combat would be so fucking good for that kind of stuff. It's like, I just want to see a really strong take on a Star Wars game in 2019.
Here's my pitch. From Software. It's a Dark Souls-esque Star Wars game, and same kind of like narrative where Dark Souls is like the really like obscure, and you are a young Palpatine going through your Sith training, and it's a Dark Souls game. You hate me now because this doesn't exist, right?
Oh, fuck. It'd be so good. Yeah, just some, like, intense, fucked up Sith shit that you run into. And, yeah, man, like, just some, like, giant, like, twisted alien monster that's been, like, fucking fucked up by the dark side of the Force. That would be a good fucking video game, Jonathan.
And you end becoming evil. Like, there's no, like, you're defeating your own, like, inner good. That's what you're doing.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to basically skip our next news item, Sean. Just I was going to talk more about Funimation's horrible Dragon Ball Z 30th anniversary set. You know, they put out more details about it. They were very misleading. They did this epic self-own where they showed us their actual, like, raw scans of the footage, which looked fucking beautiful, and then their quote-unquote remaster, which looks fucking awful. The set did finally hit 3,000 units, so it's going to be made, but it took forever to get there. It took a full week, and it has sold almost no more since then. So clearly this is not what people want. It's bad, but I don't know. I don't have anything more to say about it. It's bad, whatever.
Yeah.
So let's move on to our last piece of news, and then we're going to do our topic. And then, you know, we got to get through this, Sean, so I can go watch Game of Thrones. I'm kidding. But I am. This is how much I love you, our podcast listeners. Is I'm missing.
No,
Game
I
of
thought
Thrones
you were just saying to me, I'm like, it's fine. Like we can speed this up if you want to.
No. I meant our podcast. I realized I did have a weird William Shatner-esque pause there for a second.
Yeah.
Yes. But let's move. So, Sean, here's a funny piece of news.
Yeah.
Sean, you and I like to follow ridiculous movie news every so often. Mm-hmm. Here's one. Paramount Pictures, you might have forgotten about them, because other than the Mission Impossible movies, they don't make anything. They are developing a prequel to the classic musical Grease. You know, the one with John Travolta, Olivia Newton-John. Yeah. Very, very problematic gender dynamics, all that. The prequel is called Summer Lovin', based on the first song in the musical, about the time Danny and Sandy, our two main characters, met and had a tryst over the summer. This is, of course, the song that opens the movie where we learn about this tryst, and then they meet each other again at school and are not exactly who they expected. Sean, this goes immediately into the dumb movie idea Hall of Fame, and I applaud them for it. It is such a bad idea. It's awesome.
It feels like someone had a contest to come up with what the, like, stupidest idea for a prequel could possibly be. It's like the stupidest and most unnecessary idea for a prequel possible. Like, it's fucking ridiculous. I just don't...
Because if you haven't...
Who's asking for this?
Nobody. If you have not seen Grease, or are not familiar with the story, the whole thing is that Danny Zuko and Sandy... I don't know her last name, but it's the Olivia Newton-John and John Travolta characters. They, before the movie starts, have like a romance over the summer, and then they go back to school, and we learn that Danny basically lied about who he was to Sandy all summer long to get in her pants. And then Sandy finds out who the real Danny is, which he's a greaser. You know, he's kind of like a, you know... I mean, it's movie musical greaser, so they're not actually doing anything bad, but, like, you know, it's like, you know, West Side Story bad. They dance more dangerously than other people. And, you know, he doesn't go to class, and Sandy is a really good student, and John Travolta had kind of lied. So the content of this prequel, Sean, would just be some douchey 16-year-old lying to some poor young woman for 2 hours, and then the movie ends, and she doesn't find out he lied. I guess that's the plot of the movie, is that you get away with it if you lie, and then, like, is the end, like, she's walking to school and he turns his head and is like, uh-oh, and that's the end of the movie? What the fuck is this?
He slicks his hair back. She's like,
yeah. What's the plot? What's the third act? Like, what is this?
I mean, because we were just complaining about with the Jedi Fallen Order thing, that's like, like, we know what happens. We've seen episode 4. We know that, like, you can't save the day. But it's like, this is an even more egregious version of that, where it's like, there's literally nowhere for the plot to go, because there's not at least Jedi Fallen Order, there's like a well, we can tell like a small scale personal intimate story where, yeah, the stakes of the galaxy don't change, but the stakes of this cast of characters does. You can't even do that with this movie. You can't. There's nowhere, like, it's already just about 2 characters. There's nothing else you can do. There's no plot you can possibly do. It's fucking ridiculous, unless they just like go a little bit into Grease or something. I just don't even understand how you do, like, the climax of the movie.
Sean, I'm gonna spoil something for you. They don't know either. This is studio executives who are gonna pawn this off on some poor young writer who just wants to make their name, and that poor person their career is just gonna crash on the rocks of this thing.
Yeah, it's a phenomenally dumb idea. But I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm never going to see it.
No.
I don't even think I've ever seen Grease all the way through.
It's not that good.
Yeah. It's dumb.
You want to move on?
Let's move on.
All right. So our topic today is the biggest piece of news, I think, in the world of gaming in a while now. Sony, via Mark Cerny, talked to Wired magazine about the PlayStation 5. They did not name it, but the next generation PlayStation. So we're going to call it the PS5 for simplicity. It is not coming in 2019. Mark Cerny will be the lead architect, as he was for the PS4. It's got a new 8-core AMD CPU. The GPU is a custom variant of the Radeon Navi system and will include ray tracing technology for the first time in a console. The AMD chip also includes a custom unit for 3D audio. And most importantly to Cerny and to many developers, he told us, is that the PS5 will run on a solid-state drive, an SSD, with, quote, a raw bandwidth higher than any SSD available for PCs currently, end quote. Estimated to be 19 times faster than current-gen hard drives. They showed off Spider-Man, the Insomniac game, and it loaded literally 20 times faster. It will have support for resolutions up to 8K. The system is also based on the PS4's architecture and will therefore be fully backwards compatible with many cross-platform releases planned. The article basically intimates that Death Stranding is one of these, and it will still accept physical media. So, Sean, what is your reaction to the PS5? And then we will talk a little bit more after our reactions about whither the next generation, basically.
Yes. So, top level broad reactions of the news is I am very excited. It was just cool to just I don't know if this strategy was the best possible strategy for announcing this news, but there was something weirdly kind of amazing to just because I think it was on Tuesday, and it's just fucking here it is. Here's this whole article. Here's something I finally great. This is what I'll do during lunch while I'm eating my sandwich. It's not watching some dumb YouTube video on the Japanese Nintendo channel. I get to read this article about the PlayStation 5. And yeah, it's just cool, exciting news to think about it. Here's something. It's still vague in most ways, and we don't have obviously any video of anything. But just hearing someone talking about here's what some of here's the 4 or 5 major things we're aiming for this console, for a vague pre-elevator pitch even. It's just oh, okay, yeah, new consoles feel real for me now for the first time. Because while Xbox has been explicit about them, they're developing the next console. They talked about that very briefly at the end of last E3. It's that just has not felt really real. The Google Stadia stuff feels more this weird side thing than an actual next generation kind of thing. So this was the first thing that happened that made me feel okay, cool. Yes, new video game consoles are happening. It's going to be in 2020. And the main things they're talking about sound very exciting to me. I'm very curious to see what they're going to be aiming for in terms of the price, because that's the number one thing. I think there's a number of different sort of question marks left from what they've talked about in terms of cost and memory storage, storage space and that kind of stuff. But I think it's a good brief little thing giving you a sense of what Sony is aiming to do for the PlayStation 5. And if they hit most of the stuff they pitch here, it sounds like it's going to be a pretty cool fucking machine. It
does. I'm torn. Because on the one level, yes, it sounds like a cool machine. I love the idea of an SSD. That to me is that addresses a problem that I think we have really run into generation after generation now, but especially this time, is just that hard drives cannot keep up with the loading times games are doing. But you can't put in SSDs because they're crazy expensive, and the way systems are built right now, they don't have that many advantages. But if you're building it from the ground up, that SSDs are just the expected thing and the architecture is going to be built around that, cool. I'm good with that. I'm also very happy that they have already taken off the table the possibility that there will not be backwards compatibility. That is such a relief. We can breathe easily. I still say there is an alternate universe where Sony decided, nope, PS5 is not compatible. We are not in that universe, though, so thank God, because the Xbox also, they've long since said they will be supporting Xbox One on the next gen. So that's great. But on the other hand, if this is roughly what they're doing, good God, it will be expensive. You cannot get this down to $400, which is the question, will it be all this, or will it be very expensive? And then it opens up, and this is where I feel we have to do the topic about the next generation, is what is the next generation going to look like? Because it does still feel soon. And I think it feels soon because the way game development has slowed down this generation, we had a couple of hot years in the middle of the generation. I think 2016, 17, 18 were pretty hot years. 2019 is pretty slow so far, and it seems like it's going to stay pretty slow. Xbox has nothing. PlayStation has Days Gone and maybe Last of Us 2, but we don't know anything beyond that. Nintendo is a different story, so we'll put them aside for now. But so it feels like we're still in kind of a pretty slow place. And if game development keeps slowing down, the 7 years we got out of these consoles does not feel as dense as the 7 years we've gotten out of other consoles to me. And I think that's one thing to think about. The other thing is that if the next generation is going to be, clearly right now, Sony and Microsoft are angling on this battle is going to be fought on the lines of how much raw power we can pack into a box. That really has never been an effective strategy for console wars. It's just not how this kind of thing I think is best fought. It's interesting, but I don't think the PS4 won this generation because it was more powerful. It is in a sense, but it's more that it's more usable. And it was a much cleaner pitch from Sony that got it to the place it is. And then it brings up the question to me of, is this a traditional generational shift, or is the idea they don't name this the PlayStation 5, and I think there's a possibility it's not, that they won't literally call it the PlayStation 5. I think there's a possibility this is the PS4 Pro on steroids, and the idea is not necessarily that every game will play on both, but we're going to have a much longer period of cross-gen support, and they're not going to make everyone go to the PS5 immediately, because I think it's going to be a hard sell if just more raw power is the pitch. I don't know what you sell with that at this moment in time, especially they just launched new consoles in the Pro and the X 2 or 3 years ago. So this whole generation has been very confusing to me, and this still confuses me.
Yeah, so let's run down some of the elements of the sort of the specs or whatever they've given us in a little bit more detail. So, just like in broad terms, the CPU and GPU they're using are both new things that are as far as I know, I think both of the CPU and GPU are not currently on the market. They're both AMD. So that means that what they're aiming for is more powerful relative to where PCs are now than was for the PS4 was relative to when it launched, by quite a bit, because both the PS4 and Xbox One were a little bit underpowered relative to where the PC market was, and it feels like this time they're aiming for, and again, I'm very curious to see what they're going to do in terms of price stuff with this, but because it does seem like it's going to be expensive, but they're aiming for something that is more powerful and is going to be pushing the boundaries a little bit. I think one of the reasons for that is them wanting to incorporate some form of ray tracing, which they haven't been explicit in. Is there going to be some piece of hardware on the thing, like a chip or something in the GPU that's going to facilitate the use of ray tracing the way that there are some NVIDIA cards that do that, or is it going to be a software solution? But for people who don't know what ray tracing is, it's basically a different way of calculating. Typically we talk about in terms of lighting, and it's a way of sort of allowing the game to generate and calculate and understand vectors for light. And so literally tracing rays from a source and understanding how it will bounce off surfaces and that kind of stuff. And one positive outcome of that, if that becomes an expected thing that most, if not all games will start using ray tracing for things like their lighting, will mean that lighting will become a much easier less time-consuming task for developers, because they won't have to sort of hand design and bake in individual lighting for all the different elements in a scene. They'll be able to sort of create an overall sense of how they want the lighting to work, and then the ray tracing stuff will be able to take care of it. Is the sort of the basic ideal way that could happen. I thought it was also interesting that they specifically said that ray tracing, because I've never heard this, that they could use it for other things like audio, to be able to have audio bounce around in an environment in a much more accurate sort of simulation-y kind of way, and that's part of what the 3D audio thing they talked about was this idea of, we can use ray tracing to have more complicated and more variable sources for audio in an environment. That's a cool idea. So that's kind of where they are with the CPU and GPU stuff. I think it's mostly that wanting to kind of push the edge a little bit, want to incorporate ray tracing, which is still new for PCs. Most PC games do not have any sort of ray tracing thing. It's only shit I think Battlefield 5 has it, if you have an NVIDIA card that supports it and that kind of stuff. So that's cool. The big thing is definitely the SSD. And the Digital Foundry video that kind of broke this down a little bit and talked about the specs, I think had an interesting point about what they think is meant by that this SSD will have a higher raw bandwidth than any SSD available for PCs. Is that what they actually mean is that the custom AMD CPU that they're using that is not a CPU currently available on the market is what actually allows them to take advantage of that SSD to make it faster than anything else, and not that they've invented like a supercomputer SSD that like the SSD itself is physically faster. It's more the CPU being able to take advantage of the SSD, and that once that CPU is on the market, it will just be, well, then you can buy that CPU, put in your PC, and it will be able to do the same things that it does in the PS5. That makes more sense to me because this, like the claim of, oh, we've created an SSD that is better than any SSD that you could possibly buy on the market seems a lot to me. And like that, like very technical, like, oh, technically it would be able to read the SSD faster or whatever. That it makes more sense if that's what they're like sort of marketing speak is going for.
Well, and it does. And because frankly, that made it sound like, I mean, already SSDs are so expensive. That is the biggest question mark on the price of this thing for me, is that if this ships with less than a terabyte of storage, it's fucking useless just at this point in terms of how much you need for video games in the year 2019, let alone in 2020. I mean, Jesus, you know, if you're incorporating all of this stuff into video games, like, you know, Red Dead was 100 gigabytes. Like, you need a terabyte. A terabyte SSD is an ungodly expensive thing to incorporate into any laptop these days or anything like that. So that already is just a big question mark. And then they were saying, oh, is it like a newfangled SSD they've made? That sounds really expensive. This makes more sense. I still really do wonder about how they're going to make the SSD cost effective. Just because like those prices have been slow to come down to. I feel like people are constantly predicting it's going to happen and it hasn't.
Yeah, I do feel like we have seen in the past year or so that like SSDs have started to become a lot cheaper, a lot faster within that like 1 terabyte sort of range. Because I'm betting it's going to be 1 terabyte, which is still expensive. It's still like $100 if you buy one on the market. But
yeah,
by the time we get to 2020, that will be cheaper. So I'm guessing they're going to aim for 1 terabyte, which is still not a huge amount of memory.
But they can't go any smaller. Like if this were 500 again, that's wild, you know. So they have to go for a terabyte.
Yeah. So I'm guessing it will be 1 terabyte. One thing I'm very curious about is how will like additional memory stuff be supported? Like, will you be able to replace the SSD? Which, if it is just more that, oh, the CPU is what is actually making the SSD faster, then presumably that would mean that even if it would be very expensive, you could buy a bigger SSD and just kind of slap that bad boy in there. Or I'm hoping that there's just like maybe just like external hard drive support that obviously would never run the game off of the hard drive. If the expectation is every game is designed for an SSD, that would mean that mini games would simply not be able to run off of a hard drive because it would be trying to stream in assets at the speeds of an SSD. And if the game is designed for that, like your level would not just like you wouldn't be able to move forward in the level at some point at the like design speeds that you should be able to. So I'm hoping that at the very least there's like it would be faster to sort of like, here's like, you get like a 4 gigabyte hard drive, you plug that bad boy into the USB stuff, you download all the games that are like these are the games I played 2 years ago. I'm not going to just randomly want to boot this up out of nowhere and need this at my fingertips, and that you would just be able to transfer that into the SSD. Like, hopefully, I'm guessing that that's probably what they will do, because they need some sort of additional memory support, and just expecting people to spend like $300 buying a 2 terabyte SSD is a big ask. So I'm curious to see like how they talk about that, how they will talk about the memory support, because that's the big downside to doing the SSD. The plus side to doing the SSD is what they talked about with the demo for Insomniac Spider-Man, which there were 2 components to that. One was them saying like, we just did like a raw fast travel style load, and that load on the original PS4 was like 20 seconds or whatever, and with the PS5 specs, it was 0.8 seconds, I think.
That's wild.
Which is basically instantaneous, and that's very cool because, especially like playing something like Sekiro, the load times can get kind of long, and that's very frustrating in a game when you die a lot. The thing that's more exciting to me, though, is something else they talked about, which is in Insomniac Spider-Man, the speed at which you can move in the world with like web swinging and stuff is directly throttled by their ability to stream in assets for you to travel through the game. And so, you know, Uncharted Spider-Man is a very polished feeling game, and part of that is that like they do not let you swing faster than they want you to like see like a half-loaded world, which is something that I always think of Grand Theft Auto 4 on the Xbox 360 and PS3. If you got like booking down a road in that game, you would just go to like the road was like this like just like gray mess of no texture, and you were basically floating above it and stuff. There's like you just kind of broke that game because you could move faster than they could stream assets. So that what that means is that they like kind of tweak the numbers and let you smooth through Spider-Man physically faster than you would be able to in PS4. So the SSD thing is not just a change that affects like loading times and that kind of stuff. It's a change that like affects what game designers can do in their game, and that's something that's very exciting. The idea of, you know, it might be rough the first year or two where SSDs are still very expensive, but the promise of let's just fucking pull the cord, let's make it so it's like we've been toying with this for like fucking 8 years or something now. Let's just make it so SSDs are like the expected thing. Game developers will design their games in mind with an SSD in mind, and let's just push it into that field. And assuming that Microsoft does the same thing with the Xbox 2 or whatever they call it, that would be like I think that'll be a bigger shift in video game design than maybe people are expecting right now. That like once you are not designing for hard drives at all, that gives you like this whole new field of things that you could do with your game.
Absolutely, because the PS4, if you go from the 3 to the 4, the PS4, the pitch was very much, it is what you have expected, it's what we had last generation, but it is a little more powerful, it is easier to develop for, it's easier to just pick up and play, like it works, right? That was kind of like the pitch for the PS4. We're not adding any new bells and whistles necessarily, like built-in share functions and stuff like that, very nice. Suspend resume mode, which was not there day one on the PS4, very nice, but it was not, they were not rewriting the basics of game design. And, you know, there's a reason why these last two generations, for me at least, Sean, blur. One, we re-released every fucking game from the last generation on this generation, and two, the basics of game design did not change a lot. There's more you could do with it, but like open world games were big last generation, they were big this generation, they just were better this generation, right?
Yeah, most franchises like Assassin's Creed and Halo and Gears of War just kind of ended up crossing over.
Yeah, so it's
getting a bunch of new IPs.
It's kind of been like one long generation. I think in some way that'll extend, but the PS5 is aiming at like future-proofing isn't the right word. It's changing the game enough that what developers could do like might feel like more of a generational leap, because it's hard to pinpoint what the generational leap was between the PS3 and the PS4, especially in a world where you had, you know, The Last of Us and Uncharted 4 coming out a couple years apart, right? But like theoretically, this could, you know, we're in a world where the technology of video games has gotten so fucking ridiculously high, it's really hard to feel like we're having that generational leap like we did from the PS1 to 2 and the PS2 to 3, which you just felt. I think it would be hard to figure out what to do for the PS4 to 5. It feels like what they're pitching is, maybe you won't notice it day one, but like there's the potential for a real leap here. And you know, this is where I'm torn on the whole conversation, is that it feels like you kind of have to do that if you're going to move the next generation forward. Then there's the question of, is now the time to do it, and will consumers want that? But it's a very interesting pitch. I got to say, I'm very happy Mark Cerny is steering the ship again, because he knows what he's doing, and you know, the vision is very clearly laid out, and that's cool.
Yeah. A couple of the last things to cover before we move on with the bigger conversation is the 8K resolution support. I think was a funny thing to just throw in there, where I'm guessing that's like some token, if you plug it into an 8K TV, it'll like be able to vaguely upscale things, like not in a way that like is meaningful really, but is like, we know that 8K TVs are going to become a thing in the next 7 years, like broadly speaking. So let's put something in here. I wonder how much of that was like Google said it at their Stadia thing, so let's say it in our thing, even if it's like half bullshit, because it was half bullshit when they said it too.
I think they don't want to get caught flat-footed like they did with the PS4, because I think I think if you gave Sony the truth serum and said, if you could have put 4K support in on the base PS4 and never had to do the Pro, would you have preferred that? And I bet they would all say yes, of course. But we did not see the adoption of 4K TVs coming soon enough, right? Like, that has to be it. And I think what it is here is that they don't want to have to do a mid-cycle refresh the way they did last time.
Yeah, it's just a little piece of future proofing, but like
because also 8K TVs are not going to be adopted the way 4K TVs have been. The market is not going to accept that, at least in the next 10 years. I will put my flag down on that.
Yeah, I agree, and I just saw some people online like taking that like the 8K mention as meaning more than I think it does. I think it's like a little tiny thing they kind of tossed off.
Yeah.
Then the other like major thing is the backwards compatible stuff, which. So there's kind of two components to this. One is that the PS VR headset will also be backwards compatible. They sort of like certainly kind of suggested that they will do what I think we'd all expect, because the PSVR sold I think over like 2 million copies. Like it's the most successful VR solution that's out there currently on the market. So like there will be some sort of PSVR 2 that's a better headset and all that kind of stuff, probably better tracking, but you know, a VR headset is a VR headset at some point, as long as it's using a similar tracking model. So the PSVR headset will be supported on whether the PS5 is. So that's I think was a really smart thing to put out there. Same thing with like just putting out, we're going to do blanket PS4 cross-platform. Like put that message out there as early as possible, because I think that prevents people like me from being why would I buy these games? And like especially if it was going to be that the PSVR headset was not supported, I have no idea why anyone would buy a PSVR headset between now and the launch of that console, right? Whereas like now I'm looking at it as like if a Magic Fairy comes and gives me like $400, maybe I'd buy a PSVR. If it's going to be something that's supported in the future, like that doesn't seem like as dumb a purchase as I normally would think, because I would have normally thought that would have just been contained within the couple of years between its launch and the end of the PS4, knowing that it's something that would continue to be supported.
Or $30, Sean. Get this bad boy right now. I'm holding up my little
$30. I can blow on a little pinwheel and imagine I'm in some. Going back to that dumb fucking cardboard headset. I love the idea that they came up with this very weird like IR thing with like stickers to simulate the blowing. Where it's like you've been doing that shit on like the Nintendo DS boy for like 15 years. Like we don't need some IR. But you just have a microphone, you blow into it. You don't need any of that shit.
The Switch does not have a mic. I don't think. I'm not sure why it would. I just thought Nintendo put that in everything they made since the DS, because they just like weird shit like that. They do, but
yeah. So VR will continue to be supported. And the PS4 or PS4 backwards compatibility is pretty huge. It was something that I was more or less expecting them to do, mostly because I think everyone knew that whatever the architecture for the next set of consoles was going to be very similar to what we have now. They weren't ever going to do some weird fucking cell processor bullshit with like the PS3, because that bit them in the ass so hard. So there's no, we're definitely not going to get PS3 backwards compatibility. Nothing like that will happen for like 10 more years or whatever till we can get something powerful enough to simulate the cell. But yeah, like it's very reassuring to have them just say, yes, we are doing PS4 backwards compatibility that will include PSVR stuff. So, in 5 years from now, when I want to play Sekiro Shadows Die Twice again, because I'm sure I will be able to do that without having to bring out my old PS4. And that's nice.
Yes.
That's the way it should be.
So let's talk... Sorry, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was also going to just briefly say, I do love the way that they said that Death Stranding was going to be a cross-platform game. It was just such for example, imagine if a game... Just off the top of my head, something like, I'm not saying it is Death Stranding, but something like Death Stranding maybe would be, it's like Death Stranding is going to be a cross-platform game. You would never say this unless it was going to be it. You can't confirm it, but obviously it's going to be a cross-platform game. You wouldn't mention it in this way if it was not going to be. It's
of course.
Very funny.
That's a pretty easy guess. Yeah, I mean, and of course this makes it so that we don't have to have the glut of remasters, right? Because... Yeah. If they, instead of having, so The Last of Us 2 will be a PS4 game. I think we can say that. But like, if you want to play it on your PS5, Naughty Dog could very easily just add a patch for like just speed things up, or like if it detects it's in a PS5, it can like use some of that a little better instead of having to do a full remaster. Like that's very nice because that has been a drag on this generation. But I guess getting into the topic of the next generation, Sean, I laid out some of my thoughts earlier, but it's just, this has been a weird fucking generation. It just has. Like, the mid-console refreshes, the complete collapse of Xbox as a game developer, the relative weakness of Western third-party developers, the rise of, I feel like, this a whole genre of gaming that is very popular that is not dependent on raw power whatsoever in terms of how big indie titles have gotten, and not even indies, just smaller games a lot of the time. And then the curveball of the Nintendo Switch coming out mid-generation and cleaning up and being the most successful console generation so far. It has not met the PS4 yet. It's surpassed the Xbox One. It will meet the PS4. It's selling at a faster clip. And being, you know, a home console portable hybrid, and therefore the weakest of the consoles in terms of raw power. And then I think you take all of that and you add in that game development has gotten so slow. Like Naughty Dog has shipped 1.5 games, depending on how you define The Last Legacy, whereas they had 4 last generation. They will eventually have a second with Last of Us 2, just as one example. It's really hard to know what to make of us having a generational shift, because I don't think I'm the only one to feel like, even more so than last generation, this feels soon. Because I remember when the PS4 and Xbox One were coming out, like at this point, so like 2012, and then they came out in 2013, it felt like it was about time. It's a very weird feeling. I don't know quite what to think about it.
Yeah, like I think that like when this news came out and I saw like the report and the stuff about the SSD in particular, all of a sudden it started to, like I can feel the gears turning in my head that by the time we get to April 2020 and there's been some big like PSX thing or whatever, and Microsoft has had a big reveal and we have a much better sense of what these consoles are going to be, that by that time I think I will be ready. I don't know if my wallet will be ready and I'll have enough money, because, you know, who knows where I will be a year from now in terms of that kind of shit. But just in terms of like psychologically, I think I will be ready for some new kit and like, especially because it seems like they're pitching something that is more than just a basic upgrade. It's something that, like with that SSD thing, is more of a fundamental upgrade that will mean that like, there's stuff you can do on these consoles like very explicitly that you were not able to do on the last console. And if that is just like Spider-Man goes from swinging around the city at 30 miles per hour to 70 miles per hour, that's a pretty big fucking difference. So if it's that kind of thing, like I think I will be more ready then. But yeah, it still feels soon, and part of that is I feel like this is earlier than you ever hear like official news from one of these publishers about what their next console is going to be. And I feel like, and that was like especially the case when Xbox just sort of admitted it, when everyone knew that they were like starting to look at what the new console was. And last E3, they're just like, yeah, we're looking at it. We're looking at what the next generation of consoles is. We have the Xbox One X out and all that stuff, and that's just where we're going to go, generally speaking. And we're buying all these developers and all of that. It feels like they sort of have started planting their flags much earlier. Whereas with like the PS4 and the Xbox One, Sony and Microsoft didn't say shit until 2013, like early 2013, like February 2013, when Sony did their big reveal of it. They didn't say shit about the PS4 until that point. Everyone knew that they were working on the PS4 because the video game industry is leaky as all hell. And this feels like maybe a sort of response to that, of Sony knew they're putting out enough dev kits and all that kind of stuff that this information is going to get out there sooner rather than later, so might as well get it out officially, which is smarter than Sony has been in the past about this kind of stuff. But I think that's one of the reasons why it feels so soon, is that them telling us that it's happening is way sooner than they've ever done that before. I think that's one of the reasons why there's like that mental effect, because this generation is going to be, once it's 2020, basically as long as the last generation was, which was already quite a bit longer than generations have been in the past.
But it doesn't feel as, you know, like I just can't like I feel exhausted. I'll be, my honest reaction to this, Sean, was mentally I could tell you that sounds cool. I knew why it sounds cool. Everything you're saying is absolutely true. But I sighed and I rolled my eyes because I don't want to do the song and dance again. It's just for me, it's like going through that whole shift and then the years of really fallow development in 2014 and 15 minus The Witcher 3 and Batman Arkham Knight, which were the 2 games that year. And
Bloodborne, but you didn't.
Okay, sorry, Bloodborne. And then it revving up again, and that was very exciting. And then entering kind of a fallower period again, where Xbox fell off the map, and then Sony, kind of everyone played their hand, and now they're all back at the drawing board, and we're waiting for everything to come out again. And then in the middle of all that, the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X came out, and we had to do that whole song and dance, and my wallet hurt from getting the PS4 Pro finally. And then the Nintendo comes out. I know this isn't, you don't have a Nintendo, but, you know, I just feel like I'm starting a whole new generation with a Nintendo Switch, and that's come out, and it just feels like, oh my god, and we're already doing this next one. I just feel exhausted, and I think part of it is also like that this generation was so heavy on remasters and re-releases because they had to fill so much space. You know, so many major franchises just completely lapped this generation. Grand Theft Auto will have lapped this generation. Elder Scrolls, Halo will have mostly lapped this generation because Halo Infinite is not an Xbox One game, right? Can we say that yet?
If it is, it's going to be a cross-platform thing. There'll be an Xbox One and Xbox Two version or whatever.
So like Halo minus one game lapped this generation. We started to get some new franchises, but you know, whereas like the PS2 generation, it's really hard to remember that was only like 4 or 5 years because you would have, you know, full trilogies of games coming out, and you know, same with like the Xbox 360 generation was 7 years, so same as this, but oh my god, it feels so much denser because just the amount that came out in terms of different franchises. And this has been, if you take away the technical generation, we've had a couple of years this decade that were absolutely phenomenal for gaming. Only part of that was connected necessarily to the technology. Like we've talked about before, a large part of that was just connected to the kind of resurgence of Japanese developers, I think, which is a lot less dependent necessarily on console technology. So like it's just been a weird generation, and the prospect of like starting the whole cycle over again is a little bit for me like I feel in my gut tired when I think about it. And maybe that's just says something about me and life in general, but that's what I kind of feel when I read about all this. I mean, is that reasonable?
I don't think that that's unreasonable. I think, like, I just have, like, a little bit of a different perspective on it of, like, because there is no doubt that, you know, if you go back further in history, like video games have gone from this process of there just being fucking hundreds of games just coming out constantly to progressively, as the technology has advanced and that's not become feasible, that has scaled back and scaled back and scaled back. And if you just go, like, there are entire genres of video games that practically do not exist that would have dozens of games come out a year. Like sports games have, like, there's the one franchise for each sport. There's like one franchise of hockey games. There's one franchise of, I guess there are two of basketball games. Basketball games got away with having two of them. There's like one football franchise. It used to be that you could go to a store and there'd be a section of the store that was just fucking American football games, and that was it, because that's how many different games were coming out in that genre. Because you'd have simulation-y ones, you'd have ones with the license, one without the license. Here's an arcadey one. Here's one set in space. Here's one that's like an adaptation of fucking Space Jam, or, you know, like it'd just be constant shit all the time. You'd have, you know, I mean, the entire movie tie-in, like, licensed game just died. Mm-hmm. Like, that almost doesn't exist at all. That used to be every fucking major popular Hollywood movie would come out with some sort of video game adaptation. It almost never happens anymore.
And I want to be clear.
Racing games have almost died.
Yeah, and I want to be clear. Some of this is good. I am not arguing that quantity equals quality. It does not. Some of the, you know, paring down has been, I mean, much of it has been very good, just in the terms of, like, the games coming out are amazing. You could not have made, let's say, God of War on PS4 in the kind of cycle you had in the PS3 and PS2 days. And I know that because it's a very different game than God of War from 10 years ago, right?
Yeah, 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah. But it is just, I just think in terms of like, but then asking us to move on in the same amount of time is where it starts to feel exhausting to me.
Yeah, because like, yeah, the way I feel about this generation of consoles is that sense of there are way fewer games coming out, particularly from like major AAA developers, but a lot of the stuff that has come out has been so good, and there's this wider variety in the sense of like experimentation that I feel like a lot of the 360 and the PS3 generation kind of didn't have, and it would have in fits and starts. But so much of the 360 PS3 generation was this sense of like, we're pumping out a lot of trilogies, a lot of very gray brown looking games, and like there's a lot of that kind of like treadmill. That this generation, you just like stuff like Hitman just could never have existed before, and has been such like a lot of those kinds of games have been so enriching and like diverse and strange and interesting to me that the sort of marketplace of the PS4 has allowed there to be really interesting games from all sorts of different groups, whether they're indies to full on triple A's. That like that I think I overall feel much stronger about the output on this generation than you do, because so many of the games have been so high quality to me. And this is something we talked about on the top 10 podcast we did, top 10 games, like kind of Redux that we did a while ago, that a bunch of the games on that list were games that came out this generation, because I think they're just that fucking good.
No, and I agree, though. Like, I think the best of this generation is the best of any generation since probably the Super NES. Like, I think since 3D gaming came in, this has been, if you look at the cream of the crop, this is the best generation. I don't think there's even really any question about that. Like, when you look at PS1, 2, 3, 4, if you just take those four systems, like, this has been a magnificent generation. Some of it has been driven by, you know, what you can do with the console tech. Some of it has just been driven by changes in, I think, development patterns and audience behavior and things like that. No, we've talked, you know, I've loved gaming. This decade has been a great you know, we're going to do our top 10 of the decade at some point soon. And it's going to be hard, because this has been a really amazing decade for video games. If you do, you know, the tail end of the 360 years and then all of the PS4 years, holy crap. I guess all I mean is that it's not that I'm disappointed. I mean, there are places, like I do think like it is a major story what's happened to Western third-party development. There have been signs of life, but overall I think we'd agree it's anemic.
Oh, yeah. And part of me wonders if like what we are now seeing is like the cycle that never existed before, which is one generation, Western AAA is kicking ass and Japanese AAA is almost non-existent. And then the next generation, Japanese AAA is kicking ass and Western AAA is almost non-existent because they just don't understand what the fuck they're doing. And maybe we'll swing around again. Maybe next generation, Western AAA, like EA and Activision will get their shit together and put out more than like 2 games a year, which it feels like is where we're at with them, if they put out any game that year at all. Because a lot of that has been just the sense of there are not a lot of mid-tier publishers at all in the market anymore, and the handful of big ones, like if you have EA fuck up for the entire generation, which is basically where we are, with like the exception of like early on in the generation, they had a couple of good shit like Dragon Age Inquisition. I think people like Battlefield 4. But other than that, they've kind of fucked up this entire generation. That has a huge impact on the entirety of Western AAA development, to have EA just fuck it up entirely. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's felt this way is you come out of E3 and one of the presentations every single year has been EA showing nothing again, which has been every single EA conference they've had since these consoles have come out. If EA can somehow steer the fucking boat around, or they die and something else rises in its ashes, I think hopefully Western AAA will have bounced back stronger next generation, kind of taking this one as a bit of an L, the way that Japanese developers did mostly for the 360 and the PS3, when they just kind of didn't fully commit or I think understand how to use those consoles and the online stuff and like the HD element like as effectively as possible.
Totally. And Xbox is a whole other conversation here, because you want to talk about someone fucking up an entire generation. I mean, we've never seen what happened with Xbox this generation, where one console did not collapse, but was there the whole generation, sitting on the sidelines, not making games. You can play games on your Xbox One if all you play is third-party stuff, but they just didn't make games for an entire generation. That's amazing. It's really makes me curious what happened. Like, I honestly think Xbox is going to have an easier time selling their next generation unit than the PlayStation 4 because they've been such a sideline player. I think a lot of people are going to forget they fucking existed, you know? Whereas, like, Sony, I mean, then this is the question. Do you think the appetite will be there next year to do this? And how are they going to be able to sell it? Because I'm guessing there will be a lot of people who do feel like me to a certain degree. Because this was a generation that, you know, brought a lot of people back into the fold as gamers, and particularly for the Sony brand in America, you know, made PlayStation much stronger than it had been since the PS2 days. And I just, you know, I wonder what the appetite is to upgrade. And I wonder if Sony's thinking about that, and maybe, like, the cross-gen nature is going to mean that, like, it can be a slower transition. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, like, one thing I'm thinking about is, I think one of the reasons why we're having a little bit of the, like, because, you know, I'm trying to put a bit of a positive spin on my feelings, because part of me is just, like, kind of tired, but I think some of that is we're getting old, Jonathan.
I know.
And it's hard when you get old. Same thing with, like, I had the same feeling when I was watching the Star Wars stuff of, like, I'm an old piece of shit now. Like, this, like, you can't, like, nothing can move me the way I want a Star Wars trailer to move me anymore. Part of that is they keep on fucking up Star Wars, and you can't trick me anymore. And part of it is I'm just an old piece of shit now. But when I think about, when I talk to some of the high schoolers about video game stuff, they always ask me when, like, video game stuff comes up, because they know I play games, they always ask me, what console do you play? And whenever I answer Sony, they're like, right answer. Like all of them, because if you think about it, these consoles came out when they were like 10 years old.
Yeah.
So for most of their life, for like video games being a new thing, these are what it's been, PS4 and Xbox One.
Which means it's been PS4.
Exactly. And like, I don't think I've met a single high schooler when it's come up that's like no, I'm on Xbox. Like, I just don't. That just doesn't seem to be a thing that existed. I think the only people who play Xbox are people that, like, transitioned over and are really fucking diehard about the Xbox brand. But anyone younger, like, they just don't seem to, like, they're either way into Nintendo stuff or they're Sony. Like, I just have never seen anyone be on the Xbox side when they're very young. And I suspect, I haven't talked to any of them about the PS5 stuff, but I suspect that when that kind of starts ramping up, that I bet they're going to be really fucking excited about it, because it's going to be, for them, really their kind of first go around. Whereas for us, we're old and tired and shitty about it.
Well, the PS4 was kind of ours as adults. I mean, you know, we were Xbox people in high school, because that's what was popular. And you know, we switched to Sony when we had disposable income, and, like, we were making that choice. So, like, yeah, no, I totally get that. I'm very curious, you know, because also, like, there's no indication so far in Microsoft or Sony's plans that they're doing anything to react to Nintendo, other than clearly playing on a different playing field, which could be good for everybody. Like, Nintendo's not trying to play on their turf, and they're not trying to play on Nintendo's, and maybe that's the easiest thing to do. But I'm just wondering, like, do you think the Switch is going to play into this at all? Because it is a gargantuan success at this point.
Yeah, I think they effectively exist in two different markets. Like, I don't think it's really going to impact either one all that much. One, because especially when these come out, the Switch will be an even cheaper console, relatively speaking. Like, it'll be $200 to $250, especially if they do all the cheap version, and all that will be out by then. And yeah, I just think I think they do effectively exist in different markets at this point. Like the Switch it has cemented itself into this, like, weird pseudo handheld space enough that I just am not sure that there's really that much competition, because the Switch hasn't really impacted the PS4 sales. The PS4 sales don't seem like they have impacted the Switch. They kind of have continued agnostic of one another, and more or less, like, their trajectories just are, like, both just keep on going fucking up.
I do,
and so, like, I just am not sure if it's going to. I feel like they exist enough in different spaces enough, and will showcase different enough kinds of games. I'm not sure that they're really going to be in direct competition with one another.
No, I feel that. I think there is an argument that, at least right now, and I've seen this around, you know, town, that, like, when people are going out and buying a console right now, I'm seeing people gravitate towards the Switch more than PlayStation or Xbox. Like, my roommate, you know, did not own a a console recently, and what did he wind up buying over the Christmas? It was the Switch. And I feel like that's where the momentum is now, but it's also the newer system.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious. I do think Nintendo has impacted Xbox. And I would say that just in the sense of, like, who are the two that get in the conversation? It's because if there's these two playing fields, like we're talking about, Sony's over here, Nintendo's over here, where does Xbox fit in? You know? Because if you've got two very clear playing fields, and one of them is just, it's the competitor on the other one, but there's a very clear dominating force, you know, how does it get in? And I think that's still an open question because, you know, Microsoft has made a lot of smart moves. They've got their streaming stuff. They've bought some studios. But the question is going to be, in 2020, can Xbox show us something? I don't give a shit about the power. Will they have video games on it? And if they can't do that, I think it's going to be the same thing, and that's it for Xbox, you know?
I mean, the main thing for Microsoft is they need to prove that they know how to run their first-party and second-party studios, because they just did not this generation at all. And the number of different studios like Lionhead that were just killed, and games like Scalebound that were killed, or maybe it will be revived miraculously on the Switch if that rumor is true, which we still haven't heard any movement on that, and it still feels like a fever dream whenever I vaguely think of it. But yeah, like the amount of fucking up that I feel like Microsoft did in terms of their handling of their game stuff this generation. Like, they talked a good game last E3 of, here's what it was, like 4 or 5 different studios that they had straight up purchased. Even if some of them were like Playground or whatever that makes Forza Horizon, that were effectively a Microsoft studio, but they like bought them outright. That, you know, they need to be able to show that like those purchases are going to have to like come to fruition and like bear fruit for them as a brand and as a studio. And like, if they can't show that, like if they don't have anything to show from any of those studios, even if it's something very early, because it's going to be something early at E3 this year, it's going to feel like they fucked up. Because if all they show is a trailer for Gears of War fucking 5 and Halo, and like another vague trailer for Halo Infinite where we don't really even know what that game is yet, and I don't think we're going to know that much more about it after this E3 either. If that's all they have to show, that, and I guess they lower a car from the ceiling or whatever for the next Forza game. If that's all they show, because it's all they've shown for anything this generation is Halo, Gears, and a car falling from the ceiling with Forza, it will be EA all over again. If this E3 feels like another Microsoft E3 where their overall strategy and like output is not different, it's going to be a big fucking bummer. So I think that's something they need to just sort of. They need to prove that they're going to have games. They just have to fucking have it.
Because let me clarify what I was saying earlier. What I mean is that Sony has a very well-defined identity, and much of that just comes from they have a glut of first-party developers who do phenomenal work, and they're given the space to do it. You go to PlayStation, and there's good quality games that push the edge of technology and gaming, right? That's what PS4 is. Switch, it's Nintendo. Nintendo's always had a good brand. It's stronger than ever right now. They've got a lot of good games coming out, and it's the portable, you know, home console hybrid thing, and it's a great indie machine. Those are two, and they don't overlap all that much. Like, yes, there are games that come to both PS4 and Switch, but overall, those are two very clear identities, and you can have someone like me who owns both and plays them both a lot, right? But then that's where Xbox is because I don't know what Xbox's identity is. And Xbox needs to build an identity. And that's the problem, is that when Sony talks all about power, I don't worry as much because they can integrate the power talk into an existing brand where that power has a place of like, we can give Naughty Dog more tools, right?
Yeah, or when they talk about their PS5 thing, they can talk about, here's what, if Spider-Man was built on the PS5, here's what it would have been. And I'm like, that Spider-Man game was fucking awesome. If you could go 2 times faster when swinging that Spider-Man game, it would be 2 times more awesome. Please give me this console. Even if all it lets me do is play Spider-Man at 2 times speed, that would be fucking rad.
Absolutely. Xbox literally cannot do that right now because they have no identity that is strong enough to incorporate that, and yet they've spent like 4 E3s in a row talking about nothing but raw console power, and I get that the people at Digital Foundry get excited about that, but consumers don't. Like, that's pretty much a settled question unless you connect it to a larger narrative and identity. And that's going to be the big question going into this next generation. Is I think PS4 is pretty well equipped to just keep the baton going. I don't think the adoption will be as fast as it was for the PS4, just for a variety of reasons. Xbox, like, either they find a way to build a new identity that excites people to come into the fold or back into the fold, or they're dead. And I think they're kind of, or they're at least dead as a console manufacturer. They're clearly positioning for the Xbox brand to survive, even if the boxes themselves go away. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer to what is the Microsoft brand going to be is I think they're trying to actually do something similar where, like, they're trying to exist in a different space, and they're, like, slowly pushing themselves into a different space from Sony. Whereas, like, Sony and Microsoft have been in, like, direct competition since the Xbox and PS2, 360, PS3, Xbox One, and PS4. They have existed in very similar niches. They have, like, particularly for the 360 and the PS4 generations, they have, like, had the same multi-platform titles, which is the vast bulk of the software released for both consoles is identical. Like, they've just been in direct competition in a way that Nintendo, kind of with the Wii, just sort of fucked off and did its own thing,
which was so smart.
Its own space. Yeah, which was smart because they could not do that game. They could not compete with them in that space, so they went off and did their own thing. So Microsoft and Sony have been competing directly. Now it just feels like Microsoft can't quite manage that because they just don't have any of the first-party shit, and they just bungled up the launch of the Xbox One so hard that they've been trying to fight back uphill ever since, and, like, not having any first-party studios doesn't give you a lot of ammunition to fight uphill with. What it feels like they're doing is now, like, pushing into this other space where I feel like, honestly, one of their main competitors is not really going to be Sony, it's going to be Google now. That they're fighting in this, like, services space where with Xbox Game Pass and whatever the streaming thing, I forget what they call it, but their streaming thing is going to be
Project
and I guess now, like,
Cloud.
Yeah, the Project X Cloud, thank you. I remember it was something stupid, but I can't remember what stupid thing it was. And although now, like, PS5 having full PS4 backwards compatibility sort of sucks a bit of the air out of their backwards compat thing. I mean, obviously, they'll still have more backwards compatibility because they'll have 360 and original Xbox, but that will stop being as much of a selling point for them going forward. But having the full, like, services thing and being like, you know, if you want to play, you know, Halo whatever on your tablet phone, you know, on your vacation in a hotel, like, if it has good enough internet, you will be able to do it. Like, it feels like that's where they want to push. I have no idea if that will be successful because nothing has been able to be successful at that. The most successful one of those we have right now is PS Now. So there's not really any sort of real metric for what does, like, a fully committed approach to that is, like, a major pillar of your entire business. I have fucking no clue how that's going to pan out because nothing's really done it, but everyone seems super obsessed with the idea. But that feels like the play that Microsoft is trying to make, and if they are successful at it, it feels like they will be in a slightly different sphere than Sony or Nintendo, and they will be, like, in this weird place in this, like, pseudo console, pseudo PC streaming kind of world that Google is also going to try to put itself in.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's just, it feels like maybe a replay of Sega versus Nintendo in the 90s, where they were able to both sustain for a while, but something had to give because they were fundamentally playing the same game. Nintendo played that game better, Sega died, right? And part of that was the intrusion of the PlayStation, and I feel like the equivalent of that today with Xbox versus Sony is the re-intrusion of Nintendo. Do you know what I mean? Like, because I feel like very clear identity here, but the PS4 the Xbox's identity is kind of just the PS4 but sadder, as we learned with Xbox One sad. I don't know if there's space for three clear, separate identities to be sustained. In fact, I don't think there is. But we'll see. That's going to be the interesting question, because there's two very well-established ones. They're not going anywhere anytime soon. Will this third one be able to come back up? And I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
and for me, sort of wrap this up a little bit, the thing I'm most concerned about and am very curious about with the PS5 that I think is going to be a big determiner for it is how much is this fucking thing going to cost? Because I cannot imagine a world where you release a console for anything more expensive than $500 and it being able to be any kind of success. Like, I just don't see that happening. I think 500, kind of like where we said, like, 1 terabyte is the minimum in terms of storage capacity. I think $500 is the absolute maximum. And even that, like, consoles that launch at $500 have never done very well.
No.
Like, the Xbox One, like, it's crazy to think about now that the Xbox One was $100 more expensive than the PS4. It's like, because, you know, they kind of went back on that so quickly once Phil Spencer got in there and ripped the fucking Kinect out of that bullshit and all that, that they got that price down pretty quick. But $500 is a lot to ask, especially when, you know, I said that they weren't in direct competition, but, like, if you have a $500 PS5 and a $200 Switch, like, maybe that price difference is enough that, like, that is kind of, you start competing with each other, because people are going to start asking, why am I paying $300 more? That's a lot of, like, $300 is a console worth of money.
You can buy 2 Switches for that.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, I do.
So I'm hoping they can find a way to get it down to $400, but, you know, it's hard to tell because the CPU and GPU don't exist on the market right now. I have no idea how expensive they will be when they are on the market. I have no idea how they'll be a year from now. Same thing with the SSD. Like, obviously, it's like a moving target in terms of how it's going to be priced, because prices shift in tech stuff so dramatically over the course of a year, or they can. That, like, I have no idea. Like, and I feel like nobody has any idea how much this is going to cost, because it could cost like $800 based on what they're saying, or, you know, depending on how they manufacture it and what prices they can get, maybe they get it down to $400 or $500. But
it's going to be really tough because this was the thing that hurt Sony 2 times ago, was the PS2 reasonably priced, full market dominance, beat the shit out of everyone else, and then the PS3 is $600. That it could happen.
The PS3 had to do. Yeah, the PS3 did the Xbox One thing of where they launched it super expensive, and over the course of like a year to 2 years, they had to do everything they could to reel that back. And, like, we basically put a PS1 and a PS2 in this thing. Bad idea. We're throwing that PS2 shit out because we cannot sell this console for $500 to $600. And so, like, you know, it's something where, you know, I feel like since Xbox is almost certainly going to launch their console in 2020, I feel like that probably forces Sony's hand a little bit, because you don't want to have a full year difference, because that fucked them up with the Xbox 360 versus the PS3 also. So, like, I suspect, like, you know, Microsoft and Sony both are sort of like having to jockey for when are we releasing these, but there is a part of me that wonders, and obviously this is kind of baseless speculation because we haven't heard anything about the price, but wonders if, like, this is like a year too soon, just on that side of things, if nothing else, of wait a year for the cost to get down. But we'll see how that works out. That's the number one thing I'm concerned with, though.
Yep. All right, we'll be back next week with a packed show again, because next week, Sean, this time next week, we will have seen and we will be talking about Avengers Endgame.
Yep. You know, I'm excited to talk about how every single Marvel superhero will be dead and there will be no more Marvel movies. I think that's what Endgame means. It's going to be a whole new shift. Clearly, you know, that the whole Spider-Man Far From Home thing is a decoy. That movie doesn't exist. Clearly, because Spider-Man's dead. We know that from the end of Infinity War. Spoiler, Spider-Man died. So obviously there's no other Spider-Man movie.
We will also know what Persona 5R and Persona 5S are next week.
Yes.
And
Persona 5er and Persona 5s.
And I will have played Zelda Breath of the Wild in VR. All that and more next time on the show.
Man, I am... Out of all of those, somehow I'm most excited to hear about how you threw up playing Zelda.